Welcome, Max. Thank you for coming on again, as always. I mean, it goes without saying, I highly respect your activism, the work that you put into surviving the Matrix, the Crow House, and of course, the countless hours and miles traveled to conferences all over the world, including my own conference in Arkadelphia, where we had a great discussion with Jeff Berwick about cryptocurrency, artificial intelligence, and the rise of the technocratic social credit empire. You also had a workshop which unfortunately I was unable to attend because I was migrating, the conference to the second location and breaking down the venue in a timely fashion. So I didn't get to be a part of that. So maybe we can dive deeper into that subject material today. I understand you're more reserved in a public setting, so say what you will and not what you won't. We have some other great researchers on this call to help drive the conversation, some of which were in the Anarchadelphia workshop. So this is an open discussion. I am not the moderator. I'm merely the host. So let's be concise and focused so everyone has time to engage. Let's try to keep our mics on mute if you're not speaking. And of course, this is being recorded. Aims to be a piece of decentralized content. So feel free to share it wherever you would like. If anyone wants to share their screen at some point, feel free. And I believe a great place to start would be with an intro level to mud flood theory and what was once Tartaria.
An intro discussion on that. That's a big intro discussion.
A good start, I guess.
But Max, you do it best. I think you do it better than any of us, Max. Go ahead, Max.
Well, Tartaria, I mean, the whole, I mean, it should be obvious to everybody that there was an ancient civilization here. The history is wrong. It's just a lie. We've been going through trying to piece it together and figure out what's been going on. But and for someone like me, who's always researched ancient history, it was kind of a bitter pill to swallow to realize that there's actually a culture that was here, that I didn't have to go to Egypt to find ancient buildings and ancient civilization. It's right here in Brisbane and Sydney and Adelaide, and it's in LA and it's in San Francisco, and it's everywhere. There was an ancient culture here. The question is, what happened to it? It appears that there was some sort of a cataclysm, some sort of a mud flood, some sort of a reset that happened. Whether they've done that time and time again, I mean, it's anybody's question. We're trying to figure it out. Martin's done a lot of work going through tracing the Phoenician roots and all of this sort of stuff. But I mean, I question everything. I question the whole thing, even with the Earth. Understanding how this is a projection, the whole thing's a projection. It's going to be determined on what your belief system is. Your universe will be whatever your algorithm dictates it will be. That's what I think's going on here. I think there's more evidence of us being in a virtual reality, in a simulation, than anything else. And it can be whatever you want it to be, whatever you believe it to be. That's what I think is happening.
I concur. I say that.
Tartaria and the mud flood, I mean, it's just difficult to know. We know it happened, but what caused it? Whether it was a natural occurring thing, whether it was, I mean, I sometimes speculate we've been invaded. I often speculate there's more land that we don't know about, and that's who's controlling things. I often speculate that we're on the Earth's 100 times bigger or 10 times bigger or 3 times bigger than what they tell us it is, and that we're living in one section in it, in an enclosed environment in one section in it, and it's like a mine. So, I mean, who knows? Who knows what the truth is? I mean, the reality is that we're not free, and something I've been arguing for years and years is that all these rabbit holes we go down and all these belief systems we adopt only serve to divide us, and all of these mysteries exist because we are not free, and that needs to be the focus. We need to focus on establishing freedom, because when we do that, we won't have to argue about anything. All of the doorways will open by default. So that's kind of where I'd like to start things, I guess.
Right on. Well said.
But Martin's done a lot of work on the mud flood, and it'd be good to get Philip Druzin on one of the shows as well.
Yes.
And he's done some remarkable work on the mud flood. We know it was there. We know it happened. There's buildings below ground all through Australia, all through everywhere. I mean, even Seattle in Washington. Right. I mean, it's right across Europe. It's right across Australia. It's right across America. We know this happened.
Max, say no more. Max, say no more. I'll make that happen.
Yeah, it'd be good. It'd be good to get Phil on the show. I've been going to connect with him a lot of times, and I just haven't. I've kind of gone into the background a little bit in the last 12 months. I've kind of become more and more reclusive. I'm less inclined to do interviews, and I'm just less inclined to be in contact with too many people over the last sort of 12 months. I've lost a lot of faith in a lot of the people within the resistance. I just have. I see too many people being led. I see too many infiltrators keeping people appeased, telling them to eat popcorn and wait to be saved by Trump or whatever. And meanwhile, all this stuff's unfolding in the background. I mean, we're being moved into a completely new reality, and we need to get some focus on that. You know, the human race is being changed with this whole COVID pandemic, all this bullshit that they're pushing. They're changing the human race. We're going to be in a different world 2 years from now than what we are now. And we're going to look back at all of this stuff and all these arguings and all these rabbit holes and all this stuff we went down and think, well, shit, why didn't we pay attention? Something I've been saying to people for years is that there's a train coming. And if everyone doesn't stop arguing about the shape of the tracks, then it's going to hit them. And when it does, there will be no warning. It will be sudden, and they will have no one to blame but themselves. Well, that train has now arrived, and it's important that we get some focus on it. And it's also got to the point now that, I mean, so many people are complying with this. So many people are wearing face masks and taking these nasal swabs and taking vaccinations that, I mean, a lot of the damage has already been done. We're going to see a lot of sick people. We're going to see a lot of really weird stuff happening in the next couple of years. I was saying a couple of months ago that these brain swabs they're doing, these nasal swabs they're doing, are damaging the blood-brain barrier. Now they're getting you to wear these masks, which are so you're breathing in your own bacterial load. You're going to end up people getting brain disorders and brain functions. And they'll tell us it's a new mutant strain of COVID. There's been a lot of videos being put out of what appear to be nano worms, some sort of nanofibers that are seen to be moving of their own volition in these masks and in these swabs. And this is what people are breathing into their brain. And this is going to get into their brain. We're going to have this like zombie apocalypse happen. And now there's reports coming out of Canada of a mysterious brain disease. They don't know where it's come from. It's just developed in the last couple of months. Gee, I wonder what that's from. So this is the point that we're getting to. Society is being split into two people, the sheeple and the awake people. And the sheeple are going to drag everybody in if we're not careful. So it's almost getting to the time where we're going to have to bug out and just stay away from these masses because the damage has already been done, unfortunately. Even if this whole scam was exposed now and people put all their masks down and stopped doing the swabs and arrested the government or whatever, you've still got tens of thousands of people that have been wearing these masks and have had these vaccinations and have been taking these swabs. So we've got to see what's going to happen down the track from there. It's getting to a really crucial point. It really is.
It's funny that you use the train analogy because Terence McKenna always said, you know, as far as the Holocaust, or from what we understand, you know, are the lies that have been told about it, is the Jews just walked off to the boxcars without a fight. They didn't even struggle, you know, and that train's not necessarily coming to hit us. It's going to stop, and these people are going to get on the boxcars and just go right off to the gas chambers or whatever, you know, and it's all based on coercion, and whatever happened back, you know, during the Holocaust must have had some coercion aspect where people were just so compliant and willing to just give into their own slavery and execution, essentially.
Well, yeah, I mean they've done it before, brother. I mean, look at what happened with the Spanish flu in 1918 or whatever it was. Everyone wearing masks, and you know, wear a mask or go to jail. You know, you find most people of the Spanish flu, it wasn't really the Spanish flu that killed them. It was the vaccines and all the mask wearing and everything else that they did to them. So it's the same thing. They're just doing it again, you know, and people just willingly comply out of fear. I mean, a lot of the people that I speak to out there, I was out yesterday speaking to people and everyone's wearing masks. I can't believe it. Like, I've never seen any masks around here, but there was a couple of people tested positive in Brisbane. So they shut the whole country down because like 7 people tested positive for this thing that they've never even identified, shut the whole country down, cancelled the Blues Festival. Tens of thousands of people were going to the Blues Festival, cancelled it all, only for 3 days. Then they reopened everything again yesterday, but we'll just leave the Blues Festival and all the holiday. We'll leave all that. So it cost thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, billions of dollars, I think. They said something like $3 billion in lost revenue just to shut the place down for 3 days. You know, so this is what they're doing. They just bring it on, bring it off, bring it on, bring it off. And it's just getting out of control. It's just completely out of control. So And people are complying with it is the problem. People are complying with it. Like I went out yesterday, I nearly got into a fight with a guy in the butcher store because I'm just talking to the butcher about how I'm just blown out that there's all these idiots around wearing masks. You know, it's been a year. Can't people figure out it's a fraud now? And the butcher was agreeing with me, and the guy next to me just turned around and looked at me and said, "Hey, get fucked, mate." And he wanted to fight me, this guy, because he had a mask on and he was complying. And I thought, whoa, this is crazy, you know, crazy stuff. So that's what we're dealing with, unfortunately, is these people, when you're trying to tell them that, hey, look, you're damaging your health and this is a fraud, they literally get angry and they want to fight you. There's a video I saw of a guy going along with a bullhorn out the car saying, "You're doing great, complying with all the government regulations, you're doing all these things, it's all good, you know, you're not being psyoped, you're not being scammed, just paying out, you know." And this Chinese guy come and smashed his window with a bicycle. Just started throwing his bicycle against the side of the car, smashed his window, wanted to fight him, you know. So this is the sort of stuff we're dealing with, unfortunately. These sleeping masses are just getting violent when you're trying to help them and you're trying to wake them up to what's actually going on. They're getting brutal and violent about it. It's pretty scary what's going on, brother.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy, Pat. It's crazy, Max. A lot of people out here in North America, Max, a lot of people are not wearing masks, but there's so many more people who are wearing masks. I feel like I'm in a twilight zone. I haven't put on a mask since day one, and I will not unless I'm sawing wood, and I'm a volunteer firefighter. Unless I'm putting out a fire, I am not going to put a mask on regardless. Um, Pat was just saying something about they're pushing starting tomorrow with the COVID vaccination passports. Now they're really pushing that right now because I guess they're aware that people are waking up and they have a short window to push this stuff with these COVID passes.
Well, that's what they're doing in Israel. That's what they're doing in Saudi Arabia. They want to bring it in. They want to make it mandatory in Victoria here as well. I don't have a smartphone, so that's going to be interesting for them. I can't put one on my smartphone because I don't own one and I will never buy one. And I'll never wear a mask and I will never comply with social distancing. I just won't do it. And I won't go with you if you want to take me away and put me in a cage. So if we want to fight to the death right here, let's boogie. That's my attitude to the whole thing because I'm just not going to comply. And it is getting crazy. It is getting crazy. I mean, I'm pretty good here. I live out in the country. I get flooded in quite often, which is I kind of like that. And I've got like 2 years worth of food and supplies in my cupboard here. So if worse comes to worst, I can kind of weather the storm here on my own. Um, but a lot of people aren't in that position, and I've been telling people to get out of the cities and start pushing back against this for a long time. But it's getting to the point now; it's almost past that. And even with us bringing out all this information we're doing, we're speaking to echo chambers now. Yeah, they've taken us off YouTube. They've taken us off Twitter. I'm banned from everywhere. I'm banned from Facebook, banned from iTunes, banned from Spotify, banned from Twitter, banned from YouTube, everywhere. It's just I've got BitChute, I've got ThreeSpeak, I've got LBRY, I've got Minds, MeWe, which I don't really go to. So it's just really difficult to even get the information out to people now. I mean, I go out and I hand flyers out to people. I put stickers up around town. I've got these great stickers that I've been putting up everywhere. You see that?
COVID is a fraud. You've been conned. Wake up. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I stick them everywhere. Bus shelters, supermarkets. Whenever I see one of those little COVID stations, you walk into a shopping center, says wash your hands here. I walk up and put a sticker on it, you know. So it's just I just create havoc as much as I can. I talk to everybody. I walk into a shop and someone's got a mask on, a young checkout girl, and I say, "You look lovely today. Smile for me." And they just look at you, you know. And I say, that's damaging your health, don't you? And I have everybody. I mean, I try it everywhere I go, and I talk to everybody about it. But I'm finding, like I said, like yesterday, I was doing that, and people that I wasn't even talking to that are standing in the shop next to me are starting to get aggressive with me because I'm daring to talk to the shopkeepers this way. So pretty freaky stuff, you know.
Wow.
And that's what we're dealing with, you know. It's crazy. It's crazy, man. It's like we're living in a horror movie, and it's just you couldn't write this script. I mean, any Hollywood writer,
No.
you couldn't write a script of this. This is, and when you bring in the nanotech and the face masks and the little nano worms and what they're
Yep.
doing to people, I mean, you can't make this shit up.
Nope.
It's next level stuff. It's really freaky.
Yeah.
And that's why Tartaria and mud flood theory could be the key to helping, the awareness about this, because once you realize what has been erased from history, you can wrap your head around what else we've been lied to about.
Yeah, and with that in mind, I'm not sure if can you guys hear me here?
Yeah.
Okay, hey. Everything that you said, Max, I resonate with. I call that a lot of that the shadow work, or looking the darkness in the eye and acknowledging it. And I've studied all the facets of everything that you're talking about, and I spent a lot of time focusing in on that. But I also try to do a lot of light work or a lot of research that's like lifts my spirit and gives me a sense of hope or optimism or mystery or excitement. And on the spirit of the Tartarian narrative, there was a huge elements of that philosophy and that narrative and that historical timeline that I found really inspiring. And I think that all of the work that the whole research community, including you and Martin and Philip and Anatoly Fomenko and the New Earth Channel and John Levi, and go down the list of all of these heroes of ours, and this part of this new chronology movement, is that though I think it's important to talk about everything that you're talking about, and we should definitely keep that relevant and topical, there is something, like Pat was suggesting, that there is something that's a little uplifting about this new chronology movement, about unraveling our true historical timeline, that is really uplifting. And I would invite anyone to maybe step in and bring up some of the ideas about how, maybe even Martin talking about how some of those ideas have kind of lifted the spirit. When I researched like Antiquitech and etheric energy and these beautiful cathedrals and all of this stuff associated with that, the ley lines and how they were manifesting these beautiful cathedrals, I'm just in awe on how glorious it potentially could have been, especially when you throw in the airships and all this beautiful, fantastic stuff. It lifts my spirit, and I pine for that era. I want to be on one of those Tartarian airships. I want to be flying over the earth and looking down at these glorious cathedrals. And if that was really only 200 years ago, and we're dealing with this reset, and Max has talked about these solar maximums and minimums and these grand resets, and the fact that the 5G might be connected to a new reset, but that there could be these eras where the rise of logos is there, and then the darkness comes up, and maybe we go in these cycles of light and dark. And right now we're in the darkness, we're in the dark era, the dark ages now, but there might be a sense of hope or optimism that the light will come back, and maybe the glory of Tartaria will come back. But anyway, Martin and Max and anyone, maybe we could maybe focus in on some of these uplifting topics, because I balance them out. I'm literally in both realms. I study the light and the dark, and I resonate with all of it, but I feel charged at times that it helps me lift my spirit. Tartaria has really brought such joy to my soul. But with that stated, thank you for that insight, Max.
Yeah, look, it has, and it is incredibly uplifting, realizing what we had. And some of the stuff, I don't know whether you saw, Martin, did you see a video that I posted on my BitChute channel called Technasma, which was Russian subtitles, which talks about resonators. You just create a resonator in a certain shape, like a cross, like a swastika, like a Star of David, like all of these things. These are actually energy resonators. All you've got to do is put a vibration into them, and they pull energy from 0 point and just create it. You put these together, you've got your flying carpets, you've got your Vimana, you've got all of this stuff is all provable, and it was all there, and it is incredibly uplifting. And what
there we
doing
go,
now,
Max. Talk about bring that up.
You say that we're in a kind of a dark age now, but you look at what they're doing with this scamdemic, and they're creating an entire world of critical thinkers. They're actually bringing critical thinking back into the fray. A lot of people aren't getting it, but a lot of people are. So they're basically reintroducing critical thinking. So in many ways, it's a good thing. I mean, and the way you do it, you can't get depressed about it. As I've often said, you've got to walk the path of the warrior. You face infinity without flinching, no stake in the outcome. This is just a path of enlightenment. This whole journey through life is a part of it, a path of enlightenment. It's a path to find your true self, and you can never die. You never die. This is just an experience you're having. So what's to fear? What's to fear through any of this? And I see it, I can almost see it as a form of soul purification. All these zombies and all these people, you're going to purify consciousness through this, and you're creating a world of critical thinkers. You're getting that back into human consciousness, and I think that's a good thing. And when you look at the resonators, I mean, we're getting so close to figuring out how they did this, which is why they're so intent on pulling all these old buildings down, because all these old buildings are power stations. They generate their own electricity, and if people can figure out how to turn them back on, then it's going to be game, set, and match. So I think there's a lot of that going on as well. I think we're living in a really positive time. I think they're freaking out, which is why they're doing this, because they have to do this. They have to cull the population now, because if they don't, they're going to lose power. And I think that they're moving too fast. Too many people are waking up. So I see it as, with all the negative stuff, I see it as a really positive time.
Yes, Max, that's what's so great about you. And why I've been following you for 10 years, and you do shadow work and light work, and half the time you lift my spirit, and I just feel so full of love. And then we do all the dark stuff, and we research that. And just what you said, like, let's go into Tartaria and lift the spirit and talk about the glory of this era and maybe how it lifts our spirit. So thank you for contrasting. That's what I love about you. You have both sides of you, and I think all of us need to do the shadow work and the light work. So maybe we could switch gears, and Martin can come in and bring in some of the glory of Tartaria.
Well, it's the sacred geometry. It's just beautiful. It's an unbelievable science of Tartaria. And we can't replicate anything like this today. They don't even attempt to replicate anything like this today. They just destroy it. But I'm totally in the camp with Max. I think this place is a simulation. I think that it is malleable through intent. Behind intent is also motive. So that has to be addressed and watched. But I think definitely that we are creators. And I've put it to the test 1,000 times since I was a teenager, and it's always worked. So I know this is a fact. Now, concerning the Phoenicians, Max, there's stuff that I've been looking into with them that it fits so much in with the simulation idea. It's absolutely unbelievable, but it's associated with water as well. So I think like this is some sort of game. I really do. I think that we're in, there's certain players in this reality, guys, like Max and other people who seem to be able to affect change in the entire paradigm. And I think that we're being viewed. If I was to hazard a guess as to where we're being viewed, I would guess it was through the mirrors, is where I think we're being watched. Mirror vision. Terror-vision. Yes, I coined that. Terror-vision, yeah. So it feels like that as well. And the thing is shifting constantly. Each day looks completely different to the day before. Everyone's feeling it. The vibration's lifting. The whole thing is evolving. Consciousness is evolving with us. And soon as we're ready, we can all see clearly together at the same time, then the great unveiling and everything that it needs to be known about this place will be unveiled to us, is the way I feel about it, like Max just said. So yeah, definitely. But the evidence is there. If you're going to have a reset, don't leave the evidence on the ground, okay? We know there's been reset after reset, and I think the social engineers and contemporary music, etc., told us this happens over and over again. But don't ask me how I know and why I know. I don't know. But I have a distinct feeling that this is the last time. Why? Well, maybe because of the weirdness going on at the moment. But with Tartaria, can I just show you some stuff, guys, and just give you a quick 5 minutes, just shoot through and share screen, give you some idea of some stuff, yeah?
Yes, absolutely. Make it happen, boss. Yep.
Yeah, well, the golden age of Tartaria, we know already had free energy using resonators. We have the evidence over and over again. We can show you this is like Moscow and the Kremlin, fully illuminated, 1700s. Again, early 1800s. So it's, when people are going with the narrative or the Hegelian dialectic of Tesla and Edison, There's just no evidence for these people, either of them really, guys. You know, there's no video evidence of Tesla ever existing. It's just another paradigm for you to look down and think, oh, Tesla invented free energy. No, this was a Serbian guy. He's living in a place where this stuff is up and running. When he was a boy in 1856, guys, this guy witnessed a lot of changes. But electricity was definitely a thing used from the buildings, from the ether tech, resonators, catching a charge, and utilised through the population. Now, they tried to get rid of this over the period of time, guys, as I'm sure you all know. I'll give you some evidence here. This is in Brooklyn. So they use this, you know, these portals. It's like a resonating tech. You know, if you think of church windows, are all set in a different snowdrop. Every single one, no two are the same. So they all have a different frequency, 432, whatever it is, and a different effect on the ether. This place must have been fantastic. So I use this building. It's in Brooklyn. There is in the modern day. So they dismantle the tech of these buildings, and all of this, like Max was just explaining about the subtle energies of technosmia. So, you know, even with gargoyles or definitely these Phoenician agitations, they affect the ether in a negative way. They really do. And they put Solomon sigils into wrought ironwork as well, guys. So this was this fantastic place in Tartaria, 1904. Look, beautiful Tartarian buildings.
Wow.
These aerials and everything, you know, drawing in these electrostatic potential and this, you know, whatever is locked in the, you know, total potential within the ether. And the higher up you go, the more electrostatic potential is available. So all you have to do is get up high, really. So this is a nice little shot. There's the building in the modern day, but everything outside this fantastic building is just piles of dirt, mud, stones, and rock. So, you know, they're just getting rid of the previous civilization right the way through 2 world wars. You know, the bombing campaigns of World War II, they tried to tell you, and World War I actually, but they tried to tell you, you know, Bomber Harris and Dresden and, you know, Hamburg and what happened to all these cities, guys, was, you know, an attack on just, you know, military placements there or the biggest harbour in the world, etc. When all they were doing was attacking the architecture, and it was very selective. You know, here's a German shot, 1941. There is in the modern day. Well, this is an artist. I'm not sure if he's looked at our work or what have you, but he's come along in the last year or two, and he's nailed it. You know, the airships, or these steam-powered submarine airships. But it's a mixture.
You wouldn't need steam power. The thing is, you wouldn't need steam power with these resonators.
Yeah, exactly.
That technosma is amazing. That is how they used to do it. That's absolutely, I think, how they used to do it.
Flying carpets as well. Yeah, just lift these things, like yeah. So definitely,
I think there's still a lot of them parked there. When you look through India, there's buildings, and they've got on top, they've got what look like small temples for one person to go and stand in, and they're all parked around the edge of the building. It's a parking lot. These are all Vimana that you just walk in there and fly them wherever you wanted. You know,
sure, 100%. Vimanas. I was wondering, remember they were talking about red mercury make you invisible in front of a mirror? You remember that?
I've heard some amazing stuff about red mercury. I've heard that red mercury will also cure cuts and wounds. You can just put the red mercury on there and it will just heal it.
Yeah,
close the wound, like magic, like you see on Star Trek or something. You know.
Wow.
I wondered if people worked out that they were being watched through the mirrors, and they put this red mercury into their clothing and thread in the past to be able to block it, like some sort of invisibility from the other realm looking in. So yeah, I'm just showing you here. These are like early 1700s Tartarian out of a Tartarian book, basically, and it'll just show you, this old world that got completely destroyed, as you can see, Tartaria. It's advanced technology, but it's all smashed. It's all muddied. Now, I've just basically, I completed my last book and I tried to do a chronology on the mud flood. So what I've proposed, I'll say here now, is I think Noah's flood, or one of the main floods, happened coincidentally on the 1st of April, 1300. So why do I think that? I think because I think they found something in Jerusalem, on the floor of Jerusalem, the Knights Temple. I think they took it back to Switzerland, where Switzerland was founded that very year. So that is not something that really can be faked. So excuse me. So I'm thinking maybe it's the Ark of the Covenant. No, it's no coincidence that CERN is in Switzerland as well. So yeah, the mud flood, Tartaria, outstanding, power plants drawing in the ether to the onion domes. Bells played a part. If a bell is rung on an hourly basis, okay, the bell will reverberate, okay, inside the dome, and that will also cause a charge, which is why the clocks were always ringing on the hour to top up the cells, because bells draw energy and cause energy. So what we're looking at here is Omsk in mud-flooded Siberia, and the place is just unbelievable. Everything is just on duck boards, still thick with mud. You'll see some...
Yep.
Sorry?
Yeah, I said, yep, that's one of my favorite places.
Well, it's one of the best mud flood proofs, because basically you get these fantastical half-sunken power stations, and you've got to imagine that they've taken all of this, quality stone and everything down these, they can build this, but they can't build a sidewalk. Yeah, whatever.
So you're not sharing right now. So go ahead. Just so you know, you're not sharing.
All right. Really?
Yeah, you're not sharing.
Siberia, huh?
I'll show you now.
Yes, Siberia is overwhelming evidence of this cataclysm. And they were just showing. Yeah.
I'll just go back. Let me just show you. So, like I said, I thought you could see. See the size of these things here? Just the muddy streets, and all they got is duck boards. They can't build a sidewalk, but what you see is this beautiful, beautiful stone, geometric. They use a plumb line, but they can't. This is not built by these people. It's built by a previous civilization. What we think is they got reset. Everybody died except for a few, and they brought new people in from wherever. This place I feel is a lot bigger, and I definitely think they're hiding land. I really do think it's all about hidden land, somewhere where all of them are going, or probably where they've all just run off to, is my suspect.
Absolutely.
I don't think they are here. I think they've left a skeleton crew of idiots to rule us because they're doing a terrible job. But look at the fantastical architecture of these people. So yeah, going on from a chronology. So anyway, so I would say the first 1,000 years AD, prior to the Norman conquest, wasn't there. It's called the Dark Ages because it wasn't there. Nothing come out of this period, guys. Absolutely nothing. A handful of things. King Alfred, the Venerable Bede and Lindisfarne, and nothing else in a 1,000-year period. And so they arrived, the Normans, the French. And I think that in 1300s, around this time, this is when these French, or the Phoenicians, this watery people came in, which I guess is what is the Roman Empire, if you like. I think that we had a major reset, and I think that we had a calendar switch off, because it was Mad Max world for quite some time. Probably switched on in the Enlightening, which they call the Renaissance, which is around 1475. Switched back on. Coincidentally, all the calendars, like 1300, April the 1st, the first Advent Juliana Gregorian calendar shift change on that day. And if you look into every single reset period, they all have calendar changes. They all have currency. Everything changes. The whole paradigm. So the most recent we can trace is this one, is 1811 through to 1816, they say. Through New Madrid events of 1811, which is the biggest natural disaster in American history, and Missouri run backwards. But this can be traced all over Europe. It was related with comets, 2 comets, Napoleon's comet, Custer's comet. There's loads of names to these things. So excuse me. So yeah, this place in Siberia, the elites are there, but these people who live there, they are infinitely poor. They're brought in from the ships on rail as well, 1895. What's that saying? 1900? Yes, that's 1900.
Or is that I-900?
Well, that's what I just thought. But I've got like stacks of evidences. I collect data anomalies of jugs, artworks, maps, etc. and they're overwhelming. I visit cemeteries, I take photographs of date anomalies, and they are just literally overwhelming. So here's Omsk again, but I'll just show you this. You know, look at this.
Mud flood, classic mud flooder.
You're not going to build.
Yeah.
You can see this everywhere, exhibited in every city, like Max just said, Brisbane, anywhere. You know that. You know, why would you build a window halfway below? I've spoken to a lot of architects. I spoke to one once and asked him, why do you build these things below ground level? He said, I was in vogue at the time. And then I tried to say to him, did you realize that we can't find any photographic evidence, I know it sounds nuts, guys, of these buildings actually building, right, the lower level, okay, which we see behind the Great Retaining Wall, okay, and then from there on up. Now, you'd think there'd be some evidence out there somewhere of that happening, but we haven't found that. And we can't find any evidence of these buildings being built. All of the buildings in my city, capital city of Wales, 1870s, 1880s, anything before it's disappeared, except for ancient churches. But check that out. Would you argue that's not had some mud?
Mm.
You know, it's still up on the building, sure, and they just got duckboards over this deep mud, you know? Yeah, they got the fantasticest architecture. When you get further into Omsk as well, it gets worse. But they can build this like what we see in America or Australia or anywhere. This sort of Woolworths architecture, but no, they walk on mud and wooden duckboards. And I've seen this in American cities.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, but at the end of your muddy streets, when you walk up your duckboards, okay, you got that with the Beltec and everything else going on. It's just, wow. Look at this thing, right?
Oh, yeah, I got this. See that?
On this hill. And can you see these windows that only just...
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely. Me and Philip did a video with this about Tubbs. Absolutely.
Yeah, so that is a muddy mess. No doubt about that one. Yeah, right at the top of the windows there. So, yeah, we are inundated with mud. People say, what could it cause? A lot of the people in this field's got different ideas, I reckon. I feel deliberate. I feel controller, reset, like game, set, match, or levels in a computer game. Or if you think of this as in like a computer, computer circuit board, cities like we talk about.
Absolutely. And no trees in the background. You see the no trees, Max?
No trees.
Yeah.
All wildlife, because they've all been taken out in the mud flood. No trees, no wildlife. Yeah. New people, new population, and all. What you find the same for the 1800s, plain white, guys. If you're in Mexico, you get a white uniform. If you're in Britain, you get a rustic, dark brown suit. Same for America, okay, top hat or a hat, whatever hat for Europe. In China, you get the Chinaman's little uniform, isn't it, with the coolie hat. So everywhere it's got like some sort of uniform that they given from the controllers. For every single country exhibits them after reset. It's just the craziest thing. Like they've been to a quartermaster's stores. The old ladder-lean look. See them a lot. We see the ladders we do. We think that they might be just after coming in skeleton crews, reactivating the Antiquitech. There could have been a lot denser here, guys. This is why with the Giants, I feel this place was infinitely denser. I really do. And I feel the Antiquitech was possibly holding this place in status, holding this place together in a different vibration. And when they took the Antiquitech away, that vibration dropped. The fall of man. That was it. And now we're
I think we're connected to the etheric energy that we're made of, and that's the energy that we used to use, and we're in resonance of that. Something interesting about the maps that came to my attention, there was a woman in Australia here who's been looking at the maps, and she noticed the tropics on the maps. Have you looked at that, Martin?
Yeah, sure.
The tropic, when you look at the equator and then the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer, a lot of people, you'll say, well, what's that all about? What do the tropics mean? And people say, well, it's tropical between those two bands. Well, actually, the word tropic is a Latin word, and it means place of the turning, because the sun travels along the equator and it goes as far north as the tropic and as far south as the tropic. And the sun is in a certain constellation when it turns. Tropic means place of the turning. So that means the sun travels as far as Capricorn and then it changes its direction. Then it travels as far as Cancer and it changes its direction. But the last time the sun actually changed in those particular tropics, in those constellations, was about 4,000 years ago. The sun actually changes in Scorpio and Taurus at the moment. So why don't we have the Tropic of Scorpio and the Tropic of Taurus on our maps? Because maps are used for navigation. I mean, that's the main purpose of a map. Sailors, we get a sextant, they navigate by the constellations. But none of the maps that we've got there, even the maps from the 1400s and things showing Tartaria, they still show the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer, which was not the tropics at the time. So none of the maps that we've got could have ever been used for navigation because all of the constellations are in the wrong spot. So either all of these maps are forgeries or all of these maps were made about 4,000 years ago. I don't know whether you've looked into that, but that's a little interesting twist to all this. The fact that a lot of people don't understand what the word tropic actually means. It means place of the turning, and that's the constellation the sun changes its path in. And the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer simply are not the places of the turning anymore. So why are they still on the maps? And that's an interesting little perspective.
Mm. That is an interesting perspective. So they say Pierre Reese, Admiral Pierre Reese's maps are for 4,000-year-old. He's there from a previous reset, apparently, that he's got hold of. When they show you Antarctica all vegetated and animals living down there, and Pierre Reese. So yeah, he says 4,000 years ago. He reckons they're pre-flood maps that have just been saved. So. Interesting to see if it would be interesting to see the geology in Antarctica to see if there was any.
I even often speculate, like is north-south and south-north, is Hyperborea that we're looking for actually in the South Pole, not the North Pole?
Video, I just said it in my last video. I shit if you not. That's what I said in my last video. Yes. Wow. I did.
I mean, everything's backwards. Everything is backwards. How do we know? They just change the N and the S on the compass. That's all they'd have to do. How do you know north is north and south? How do you know compasses don't always point south? How do you know?
Exactly. No, I brought up a passage in the Bible that said you can never go north, you can never go south without cease or error, but you can go east or west. And I was like, oh.
Yeah. I wonder about everything. Everything is backwards, brother. Everything is backwards. And I think, like you say, this is the last reset. I think they're pulling us more into a virtual world. And what if we're already in a simulation and we're creating simulations within the simulation? We're going further into the fractals. Is that what they're doing with this? Because what they're doing, they seem to be pulling us into the mainframe. When you start looking at things like hydrogel and all the shit that they're doing in these vaccines, it's about complete control of every aspect of us. And how do you know what reality is? It's only based on your perception and based on what you're told reality is. So how do you really know? We don't even have words in the English language to properly explain reality. When you start looking how they confounded the language. I did a lot of work a couple of years ago on Magyar and the fact that there was a universal language right across the world, which was Magyar, which was the Australian Aboriginals, the Incas, the Polynesians. All these people spoke Magyar, which is the root language of Hungarian. And there's something like 33 letters in the Hungarian alphabet. They've got 50 different words for snow. I mean, you can express every single nuance of human emotion and human perspective in that language. And we don't have words for that in our language. So once they take our language from us, how can we even explain this? I mean, we go through looking at this stuff and the mud flood and Tartaria and all these things, we're kind of stumbling over each other trying to find the answers. And we don't even have the words in our language to explain what we're seeing or what we're feeling or what we're thinking. It's pretty remarkable what they've done to us. I think they're taking us a further level. Pretty soon people will be in the mainframe and they won't even know it. Something I've been noticing is that all the videos we do, everything goes online now. It's not going into the ether, it's going into the virtual world.
Yeah, I think how do you know we're not all dead? We never all died in some terrible event in the past. They'd be running a simulation hoping no one would notice.
Yeah. Who knows? It could be something like that. I mean, we are electromagnetic beings. So, and LED is actually a form of internet. You don't even need 5G for fast internet. You can use your LED lighting for it. Wow. We have these LED screens and we are electrical beings. you're already communicating. There's already an interface going on between you and your computer. How many times have you thought of something, not even said it, just thought of it, and then you get an ad for it pop up in Amazon or whatever? Yeah. I think of turmeric. I need more turmeric for my arthritis. Just think it. And suddenly I get 2 ads from Amazon to sell me turmeric. I haven't got an Amazon account. So there's already this interface going on. If they were to pull you into that virtual world, how would you know that you're in there? Would you know they'd done it? That's the question a lot of people need to ask, I think,
Wow.
I thought all along it was holographic universe. Since I read Michael Talbot's holographic universe, I thought, them experiments with his daughter when he could just under hypnosis see straight through her and see this watch that she was holding and what it said on it. So she shows that she was invisible, and the laws of whatever they've told us this place is do not exist. So it was just shifting frequency that much that she became invisible. But
it's almost impossible for this not to be a hologram. There's like about a 1% chance of this not being a simulation.
I reckon so as well, Max. I reckon so. That Bostrom, that scientist in Sweden years ago, maybe 20 years ago, he done an equation, something like a Drake's equation type affair, where he ran it through a mathematical equation, and it was almost impossible for it not to be a simulation. But he suggested it was some simulation in the future, like some spotty teenager in his bedroom in the year 3030 or something.
Our minds, our thoughts, the algorithms that we are running, like your universe is your universe that you're creating via your perception, and it's projection. Imagine if we can get enough people on board of this moving into this positive reality and this great reset that's happening, actually bringing us back to what it means to be human. And the fact that they're creating an entire world of critical thinkers, and that the wheels are falling off this whole system now. Once people become aware of that and we can project that, we can create whatever world we want.
Could I jump in for a moment on this concept of simulation theory? Because it's one thing I've always struggled with. I follow some of the sentiments, but one of the things that I don't like about simulation theory is it's connected to artificial intelligence, the AI, the singularity, and computers, ones and zeros, and we live in some kind of mainframe or some kind of computer somewhere. What if what we're looking at might be more, I would consider, I don't like to compare it to the scientism that's associated with quantum physics and superstring theory, which is kind of the simulation theory came out of that lineage. What if I wonder if there's another term that we could use that you don't associate with that, the scientism cult that brought us a lot of these false narratives and a lot of these pseudoscience that we associate with some of the scientism, elements around that. Because I kind of get what you're saying, but I always go and I associate it with that, with a lot of those elements of the scientism elements that I don't really agree with. I'm wondering if there's a way to translate it into more of the transcendental science connected to the etheric realm of using all the elementals to extract ether, the etheric energy, spirit, logos, God, consciousness, the great mysterious tremendum. Is there a way to project that simulation theory idea and not a default mode to computers or AI or the new tech? Is there another way to project it onto the Tartarian etheric energy?
Yeah, you have to police your thoughts. You have to watch their language. All the clues in the etymology and their language is where we go. It's all spells, as we know. So if we can, mess the language maybe, or just try to communicate without language, guys. This is how we were doing it before. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's like I said, we're limited by our language. We're limited. We don't have the words to explain what we really want to say. So we've got to come up with the best that we can, which is things such as simulation or hologram. And we've been taught to associate that with computer technology and all that sort of shit. What about it? What would God do if God wanted to experience reality? God would create a simulation of physicality and shatter his mind into 7 billion different fragments that all had amnesia, so he could communicate with himself and find out how he became God, and find out, just to have an experience. I mean, what would you do if you were God?
I said it last week.
You might want someone to talk to. So you do something like this, you know what I mean? So when you think of it as coming from the divine, and thinking how it is all ether and it is all connected to that, it's just our training to associate the word simulation with science. But what is science? So really, I think it all comes back to the mind of God. And I think that it all does come back to divinity. We are all simply, I mean, and imagine if you had, if you were God and you wanted to purify yourself even further, what would you do? You create something like this where all the sheep are going to go and take their vaccines and their masks and fuck off. You know, you're purifying your consciousness in the whole process, you know? So,
What if
I mean,
there's
I
another
look at it
word
as,
that we could use, Max and Martin? Instead of saying simulation theory, we would say like simulation mysterium, to bring it into a more of a terrain of this transcendental science we're talking about, like simulation mysterium, or come up with another word for this community where we don't associate it with that pseudoscience that I have trappings with connected to AI and computers.
Sure. You know, to touch on the Tartarian architecture and, you know, its understanding of sacred geometric, you know, structure. So whoever built these buildings, they must have placed them in specific locations. And to touch on John Levi's work, even all the way back to who knows how long with this, and with the ley lines everywhere, it is a sort of some sort of sigil or a motherboard in which this architecture was built on precisely. So, I mean, and consciousness itself is some sort of computer. You know, it's a transcendental computer. And like Max was saying, if God or spirit or source or whatever it was wanted to manifest itself in some, you know, simulated world, it would have had to have some sort of motherboard or a way to connect itself and create some sort of life forms that can create these architectures and expand itself. So, I mean, I'm really interested in John Levi's work with the ley lines, and then where these prominent governments and buildings are built in association with the ley lines.
do anyone know where the term ley lines comes from? Do you know where that comes from, just out of interest?
No.
Why they're called ley lines?
Oh, I never heard that.
There was, I can't remember who it was, but there was someone who noticed that certain buildings and churches were on certain lines, and they are in certain villages in England, and the village would always end with like it'd be Cowley or Barclay or whatever. It would be Ley at the end of the name of the village. And that's where they noticed. So they became ley lines because it was always Barclay or Cowley or whatever. So so even the term ley line, when people look at it, it's not like the lines have been laid out or anything. It's just that that's where they first discovered it, and that was the prefix or the suffix of all of the names of the particular villages where they found these structures that appeared to be running in a certain line. And there was a straight line between them, like they'd find a line between Stonehenge and somewhere else, and it would be a village that ends in Ley. So that's just where that came from. So there might even be another word for them, for what these energy grid lines are. But that's just, I just thought I'd throw that in there as a point of interest, as where the name originated, the etymology of it.
What I see happening, you know, from my perspective, is that all of us are coming to these new, what I would call the mystery, you know, what the Bible calls the mystery religions from the ancient world. Is that the ancient world, as we all agree, obviously knew quite a few things that we don't know, and we are rediscovering. And it seems as though there seems to be a camp that has existed for years that has tried to cover up or bury this information, but has subtly revealed, like in those paintings and the pictures and the things that Pat was showing, the sacred, the language of nature. It's not, you know, it's not what we speak. It's and it's numbers. Numbers aren't a figment of man's imagination. They exist in reality. Our imagining them. It's the fabric, you know, of the universe, or the matrix that we do live in. And that's, you know, I understand what I forget what your name is, sorry, but what you were saying earlier with not liking to equate with, like, you know, a computer simulation. But what I was even having this talk with my uncle last night. You know, he's a super spiritual, like, Baptist Christian, and he was, oh, you know, human body like a computer. And I was like, yes, it is. It is just like a computer. It's actually a lot more advanced than a computer. It has hardware, software, all the things that we are designing on Earth are our most advanced science has it depicts things that we find at the subatomic level. And in those functions he's showing right there, that's a hardware function that has to be, in a certain place at certain times to run those programs and stuff. We live in a biological shell that is able to run algorithms at nanoseconds. Like we are resonating into reality. We are vibrating. Reality, everything is vibrating. And what we think is real is not quote unquote real, because we know science that, looking down at the molecular and subatomic and quantum levels, there are things going on that we can't even understand, that we don't, that we are, but it also seems that the ancient people, the Tartarians and, whoever you want to call them, this ancient civilization, this in style world used to know stuff about this world, and it all got erased or forgotten. And the question then becomes, why was it erased? What happened to it? And the people that do know about it, who are in powerful places, why have they been covering it up? And what are they doing with this technology?
Martin, you showed some very interesting pictures of sort of like these circuit board cities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead and finish explaining that.
Yeah, to clarify, Martin's sharing his screen, Jacob, but that's not me. You got to give credit where credit's due.
I've said often the cities look like circuit boards. They're moving us into this mainframe. They're moving us into this digital world. All roads used to be bendy and windy country roads. They all became straight. Now cities look like circuit boards. You look at them from a aerial view of them, they all look like circuit boards.
Vegas, mate. Vegas, Las Vegas. It's a circuit board. They didn't got the components. Well, what we discovered about 3 years ago was this guy Piranesi was drawing these ancient plans of Rome. But when we look down on them, it's like, well, you got this part here, which is like the heat sink, and you get like basically the hard drive, and you get like all of the parts, you get the components in a modern day a modern day computer. If you look at this thing from above, this is actually a computer. Yeah, it looks like a city. The water definitely plays a role. The data stream, no doubt about it. Where's the information? On the cloud. What's the cloud? Water. Oh, they tell us there. So, flood reset. So yeah, that's another thing we picked apart. So what were they computing? What were they computing? If all of the cities are computing something, I would suggest reality, guys. And I reckon it's still are. They just replaced them with glass and metal, stuff that's not going to last next reset. And corrugated iron. So anything, whatever, hot wires or floods or what have you.
Yes.
It
seems like they're taking everything that's natural and making it unnatural. You know what I mean?
Turning everything on its head. They're creating a mirror version of reality. It's even like you say, they're talking about the mystery religion from the old days. It wasn't a religion. It was just a way of life. It was just being connected to the ether and knowing how reality works. But they call it the mystery religion. Don't look there. That's all Satan. It's not
exactly.
I think that all these religions were different chapters of the same book. I think they all work together. All you got to do is look at the religious artifacts through Europe. You find buildings, signs above churches, which have got the Islamic crescent. They've got the Christian cross. They've got a sun symbol. Some of them even have structures on them that look like the Star of David. I think all of these things are resonators.
Yes.
I think the swastika was a resonator. If you look at Technasma and you see how you put these symmetrical crosses in place to make like a power bank, there's swastikas between all of them. This is the basis of free energy, which is why they don't want us to have it. They want us to vilify it. We've been taught to hate and fear everything, which is beneficial to us. And they've turned everything on its head. Every single thing is backwards. They're making a mirror version of reality, and they're pulling us into
the truth.
It's like
the truth has been changed.
Yeah, and they've reversed it. They're creating a mirror version. They're sort of pulling us
exactly what you just said. It's not that they're just lying. They are directly reversing the truth. They are making us think
everything. And they are reversing reality, pulling us into a false paradigm is what they're doing. And I think what's happening at the moment is people are waking up to that. This is a new renaissance, what's happening right now. Because like I said, they're creating a whole world of critical thinkers through this. So,
and where do you guys seeing what you guys see? Because, we can obviously see this great awakening happening, the singularity or some form of, this renaissance going on or whatever. But what do you see happening with the people that control the world, with the things that we do know about the evil that exists, the ones that know more about this stuff, who have been studying this for years? how much control do you think that they still have of the world, and where do you think they're trying to push it? And do we, as the people, do you see us breaking out of this?
People are so intent on preserving their life in this realm. They're not realizing that this is a soul test. It's a spiritual test. You kind of come here, I would suggest, to grow your soul, to see what you're prepared to take. I don't think they'll get away with what they're doing, but I wouldn't be surprised if the human race kind of splits into two, be almost like the Morlocks and the Eloi. You will have people that go completely into that technological world and people who don't. People who do go into it, I mean, the plans they've got are pretty dramatic. I've been talking about how they want to feed us insects and all sorts of stuff lately. How what the function, what Lucifer really means, and phosphorus within our body, and all of this sort of stuff. The phosphorus which is in us, which gives us animation and is the light within us. Now they're talking about tech, where our bodies power the tech. Elon Musk is talking about lithium phosphorus batteries. So they're moving closer to the realms of phosphorus. They're now talking about feeding us insects, and they're saying that this insect food, insects contain things like melanin and stuff that they use on circuit boards because they're great conductors of electricity and memory and all sorts of stuff like that. So this is the stuff they want to feed us. So they're turning us into computers ourselves for the people who are going to go along with that. And a lot of people will, and that's their path, and that's where they'll go, and they'll go straight into that mainframe. But a lot of us won't. I think a lot of the reason they do these resets, this is just highly speculative, but I think that when they destroyed, because I think they do play this in games, they play it in levels. It's like a three level game, and you've got certain levels, all the three. The first level was the destruction of Hyperborea. The second level was the destruction of the Atlantean civilization, which would have been Tartaria, would have been part of that, I would think. And they want to move us into the next level. And it's going to be whether people go into that level or not. I think they're moving us into the mainframe. I think a lot of people already got led into the mainframe, which is why you can't wake so many people up. A lot of the non-playing characters out there, you'll never ever wake them up because they don't have souls. They're already in that mainframe. And half of the fun that they have in playing their game, whoever they are, is like playing needle in the haystack. They're trying to find all the remnants of Hyperborea, which is all the people who can think, all the people who are still aware, which is why they create the truth movement. Why they created 9/11. Why was 9/11 so obvious? It was a fishing exercise. They wanted to create the truth movement because they wanted to see who gets it. Where's all the thinking people? Where's all the alive people? Because we want to get those souls. We want to bring them into the mainframe. How many people can we get to be so terrified of ever leaving this realm, so terrified of ever leaving this prison, that they will give everything they've got to remain part of it, to be immortal or whatever within the mainframe? You know, why are people so scared of death? Because this life is just a test. It's what comes after this, which is the important part. You know, if this world destroys itself, well, this world destroys itself. It's a prison anyway. What is important here is what your soul does and the soul choices you make. You know, are you prepared to face infinity without flinching? That's what this is about. You know, so if you move into fear and think, well, gee, look what they're doing, all of those people are already in there. They're already gone. They're just trying to coerce you into going with them out of fear. You don't have to do that. And you don't have to have any stake in the outcome of this world or any stake in the outcome of this existence that you have here, because it's just an experience to see really what you're made of and what you're worth and how far you're prepared to go before you will step into the power that is you, step into your divinity and stand in that with no fear, no stake in the outcome, no fear of anything that they can throw at you. Because when you stand in that, it'll simply break against you like a wave. I mean, I'm 63 years old and I've never complied with the system. I've been living outside it for my whole life. All I've done in my life is give as much as I can to people, and everything just works for me. It just all happens. Everything just is cruisy. I have little stresses and whatever, but nothing substantial, you know. And it's about how I'm prepared to face exiting this realm, really. I mean, that's the whole reason you came here. The one part of life that you're guaranteed is that you're going to die. It's how you face that. Will you face that in fear? Do you think this is all that there is? Because if you do, then they can lead you into that mainframe by controlling your fear, controlling your thoughts, get you to come and do this, take all their medicines and all this shit to lead you in there. And then you'll be in there with everybody else. That's what I think is a lot of what's going on here. I mean, I have no stake in what happens to this world. I do what I can while I'm here to try to improve the world that I'm in. I want to leave it a little bit better than how I found it if I can. To me, that's success. If I've managed to help someone in their life find themselves a little bit and become comfortable with being who and what they are and maybe find out who and what they are, well, to me, that is success as well. But I have no stake in the outcome of this. I'm prepared to face infinity without flinching. I won't take a backward step to tyranny. And who they are, I mean, you can get into the whole pointing the finger at whoever. I think looking at the Kabbalah is really interesting if people want to do that. There is definitely a certain mafia at the top that wants to wipe out most of civilization and most of the people, including most of the Jews. So, you know, they just want their little reality. If you start looking at a Jacob's ladder and how they believe they can reconnect with the divine, they believe that there's a certain way out of this simulation and reconnect with the divine. And that's what they're trying to do. And they're prepared to sacrifice everybody to do it. So that's a lot of what's going on here as well. But again, it comes down to a personal thing. It all comes down to a personal thing. You know, are you prepared to face infinity without flinching? How much stake in the outcome of this life do you really have? All this stuff that people collect and, you know, oh, look how successful I am. I've got this big pile of shit to sit on, you know. But I missed out on my life. I collected all this stuff and I think it's me. But now I'm like 70 or 80 years old and I'm going to die and none of it means anything. And I never found me along the way. I thought it was about all this other shit.
Yeah. So, Max, let me ask you a question. Have you heard Martin talk about the giants before?
Oh, giants.
Oh no, but I know there were giants here. I've got so many photographs of giants. I mean, look at some of the buildings, the staircases, the doorways. I mean, it's ridiculous that you would think we built this shit.
That's right.
So many photographs of giants.
Absolutely.
You know,
the Tartarian giants. No, absolutely, no joke. Absolutely.
Share me. I'll find it.
Look, it really there's so much to it. I mean, even when you start looking at the Mud Fossil University guy, that's pretty out there stuff. But hey, you look at it and go, well, I can't completely refute it. You know, what's the possibility? You know, who knows? Who knows? You know, it's like every reset we get smaller and smaller. Like we'll be pygmies after the next one. We'll probably be like little guys this big, you know. And at the moment, it's like we're running around in the long grass. Even when you look at the No Forest on the Earth video that racing guy put out. I mean, who knows? We know silicon-based life exists, so why not? Why not? You say that's impossible. How is it impossible? How do you know? How does
absolutely. Check this out, Max. Check these what Martin brought out.
Yeah. But they had a lot of cryptids as well in the past, didn't they? You know, in a lot of these books, a lot of.
Well, you think about that as well with mRNA. You think about centaurs and all these weird creatures that they had. If you really want to get biblical about it, it says in the end times all these creatures will appear again, and now they're injecting mRNA into people. And RNA, I mean, you can do anything with RNA, and RNA is what turns a caterpillar into a butterfly.
Sure.
So you can turn the human race into pretty well anything you want with RNA.
Well, Max,
you put these 5G frequencies out there. You got any number of frequencies to choose from. What's going to happen when you activate a certain frequency in a certain body, depending on what injections and stuff they've given them, and turn them into anything they want, you know?
Yeah, I think it tames people down, this injection, because I got a mate who's a bit like, he's just totally rad. He's totally punk rock. He usually doesn't care about anything. And he had an injection. He came here about 2 weeks after because I banned him from my house. Yeah, he came here and he was very, very quiet and sheepish. And I was like, you know what? He's really off. It's like, where's his personality gone? It's like he's had a personality transplant since he'd had the vaccination. Definitely think it's altered his personality. Really do. So I think it's an aspect.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, once this is in there, even Klaus Schwab has said they can rewrite people's memories.
Yeah.
Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum has said that the stuff we can do with vaccines, we can rewrite people's memories. We can literally change people into whatever we want. He's said it himself.
Same close.
You know?
I'm sure you've all noticed the time aspect. There's no denying that's a thing. It's just days are like, you know, like seconds, you know. We're into April now. It's what happened? How did we get here? It's just how is time accelerating so just crazily.
That's something I
with all
wanted to
you-
touch on was time. And because I know a lot of people say, oh, things are ramping up. And I don't think so. I think that this is cyclical and everything's naturally unfolding. And especially if you study sacred geometry, because that's one of my main practices, is to understand this three-phase system of how phi rolls into itself at like a hyper fast rate until it becomes itself again on a lower third tier. It seems like this is all ramping up, just it's going along to plan, well, to nature's plan for time.
Definitely. I don't think anything's going to happen that's not supposed to happen. I think the last reset is this. I definitely think we're all going to, like Max said earlier, this is it. This is the crossroads. They're giving everyone a little respite now, okay? And then it's going to change, okay? That was just a test to see how many people would just, you know, be just a new kind of stupid with the masks, which they all have.
Hey, Martin, with all those slideshows of the giants, you guys haven't talked about the giants. Could you and Max share a few yarns about how giants were a part of the, the Tartaria area and how we walked amongst giants? Why don't you spin a yarn around the giant people that you keep showing images of?
Yeah, for sure. But I definitely, Max was talking about maglev technology. Basically, there's fibers in scarab beetles that apparently got maglev technologies. Butterflies, other animals utilize it. But there's this technology they show you in a lot of these books where it's umbrella. I think the clues are with Mary Poppins, and these wingsuits, and it seems like the people are just flying around in the sky, you know. And there's a lot. You'd be surprised. I've got literally thousands of these evidences, and I'm not even joking. But yeah, they were very fine. So the reports of people from the Hyperborean were, you know, very kindly, yeah, hyper intelligent, all in beautiful silks, and a beautiful harmonic culture where everything's at higher vibration. Yeah, everything looks like the Celestine prophecy, and these are what they look like, just in beautiful. And this is the the fall of man where we are now. So I think we cohabited with them in one of the resets recently. Why do I think that? Because the buildings are still here. They got massive doors, massive everywhere. So I think they were in one of the more recent resets, probably before 1800s or something. Yeah, these giants. And we got these crazy creatures as well. These your little yeti thing.
They're recently enough that they existed when photography was here. So
well, I think that's a lot. Put it in my new book, Max. This Eastman, psyop of photography and everything turning up in like conveniently like the 1830s. I really don't think that's a factor. I think that they are really easy things compared to the Industrial Revolution and the technology of the day. I think they could nail a bloody camera. They're really simple tech. So I think that they can't let us know that. And I think also of some of these photographs we may be looking at, maybe of a reset further back, or not even this reality altogether. Like San Francisco, for example, 1906 destroyed. I really do feel that this is disconnected from us. It doesn't feel like it's anything to do with us. I feel really disconnected and spooky feeling when I look.
San Francisco is one of the most compelling cities to show that there was an ancient civilization here. Just the story of the gold rush and how they formed San Francisco and stuff. They built that huge, massive sewer system beneath it at the time. They just thought they'd do that, did they? Before they built the town on top. I mean, the sewer system beneath San Francisco is spectacular, and it would have taken thousands and thousands of people, and it would have taken a really long time to do. And when the gold rush, they built a big quarry and built a brick factory so they could build that sewer system. Is that what they did? People don't understand that. In order to, even when you come here to Sydney with the Queen Victoria building and stuff, it isn't just the fact that they built this incredibly Gothic architecture here. These were convicts that came out on wooden sailing ships, we're told. And they would have had to have dug a quarry and made a brick factory in order to build all this stuff. I mean, that's not what you do when you're colonizing a country. You don't just dig a quarry and build a brick factory, And so, none of it makes sense. So I think San Francisco is one of the most compelling cities that we have to show that this culture existed.
Even the oldest photographs you can find of San Francisco, or this is Washington, but they're already mud flooded, even in the earliest 1850s. So these are from a previous civilization. San Francisco, though, is the best. I got some of the best video you could imagine. What about the Alamo, Max? The Alamo is a Greco-Romano temple with 2 columns, and I've had statues removed of some sorts of deities in the past. Don't know what the aerial is on the Alamo, though. Maybe that's what all this trouble is about.
Yeah, yeah.
Any chance do you have any pictures of liquefied bricks?
Oh, sure. My meltage section. Oh, I got everything. Yeah,
vitrified fortresses all across Europe. And look at the Libyan desert glass. That sort of stuff. I've actually got some here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's Libyan desert glass, which is the purest silica glass in the world, found in the Libyan desert in 2 areas. One is like a big oval, and another is like a big racetrack. And all the desert's been turned to glass, but nowhere else in the area. And it's the most pure silica glass in the world.
Used on
Seared by something of incredible heat. What's that doing there? Right in the area where apparently Horus had the battle using the harpoon of Horus, where he went to war with Set over the skies of Libya. And then where that was apparently happened, we see all of this, the desert turned to glass. Interesting stuff.
Do you think that was more connected with solar minimum and maximums and maybe some electromagnetic discharge with plasma, or with the fascish and some kind of directed energy weapon? Because there's a conversation, it could be natural or man-made weaponry.
I think it was from battle. I think when you look at the Sinai has been blackened. Half of the Sinai is black. There's like a line across it. Why? There was some sort of a major battle, and that's right where they say the battle between Horus and Set took place. So I think there was, whether it happened back then is another question. But there was definitely some sort of a conflagration that happened over Libya and the Sinai and over Egypt. When that happened again is another question. But it was definitely technology involved. Absolutely. Even when they talk about the 7 weapons of I can't remember what they call weapons of power or something. There were 7 particular weapons that were hidden because they were too powerful for the people to use. One of them is believed to be still hidden in the Dome of the Rock.
Interesting you say that. That place is made by giants. Giant coffins. Dome of the Rock.
Oh yeah.
In the modern era, when we look at 9/11 and how the buildings were dustified and turned to white dust, and we look out at Paradise Valley with all the fires that happened on the West Coast, there's a lot of speculation that was taken down with some kind of occulted technology with directed energy weapons. And then you look at the photographic evidence of San Francisco in 1906, or as Martin says, or so they say, or whatever. But you think there's a possibility? It looks like that some of these, the San Francisco fires, has the same evidence of being dustified, and it seems like they had the tech back then, and they have it now back then, and maybe they use that technology against these eras to help in the reset. Martin, do you want to run with that one? Because you're the one that kind of unocculted the fascist narrative.
I could show you Boston, San Francisco, I could show you Chicago, and they will give you one narrative, like, Civil War narrative is cannonballs did this. So reduce massive Tartarian buildings to tiny little bricklets, apparently, from a combustive wave. So it's insane. So we know something else has happened, okay? Now, with meltage, I feel from old maps, my map on the wall as well, got it, the North Africa would have been like the map of Monday, the oldest map apparently in existence, 1290, shows all of North Africa with glittering temples, and this is where all the action is, okay? And a mountain range ripping through it, Kong mountain range, and the whole place is green. And, you see the Fertile Crescent, Renaissance art will show you an area that's supposed to be deserted with all deciduous trees and looking like England, because this place that's what the climate was like then. So something terrible happened to North Africa to reduce it to dust, because it's not sand. North Africa's not sand, it's dust. This is why they have dust storms, because it's dust. Something dusted it all. Absolutely. Technology, I really do. Look at this, something that can melt these, turn it to drip. Just stone. Resonation can do it, guys. You can boil water with sound, a loud sound.
That is true.
Yeah, you can. I've seen the experiments. Or you can melt stone. There's loads of different technologies. There's another one, deaggregation using parabolic mirrors firing off one another to intensify sunlight to melt rock as well. But I think this is some sort of technology. It seems to be associated with comets, though. You know, comet runs through, agitates the EM, gets too close, it starts these giant arkins, which cause basically discharge points across the Earth, which we can see, which come two at a time, possibly more, where it bounced. Just the same as you get with welding, exactly the same sort of thing. So look at this for a mud flood, though, and it's all solidified above it.
Hey, speaking of comets, what's your theory on what comets might actually be from a geocentrist perspective or from that area?
Yes, I've been researching them 6 years and talking about them, right? So I'm live on a post about 3 years ago. I thought, look, let's have a look what they say they're made of. Now, years ago, they were saying that it was ice, a dirty big snowball, and the tail, 1 million miles long, was tiny little ice particles. Now, into it, they're saying it's a plasma effect. Okay, it's not 1 million-mile long tail, and they don't even know if it is agitated or activated when it passes, apparently orbiting the sun. It's all, they changed the entire narrative to comets, guys. So they definitely are really, they seem to come along the same time as these resets, and people did fear them, causing disaster. But what could cause this heat? Yeah, this hot wire. Do you know hot wire? You get a north and south. Yeah. So imagine this place, like, if you imagine like north and south, if you think in dialectic terms, if it flipped, if the northern pole, south pole flipped, cause with the atmosphere, it cause some sort of arcing, like hot wire. So you could hot wire Earth and cause all this, could have fried everything. Or technasmia itself could have misfired, and that could have caused it. Technasmia could have messed up, Antiquitech. All the church devices and all the machinery could have caused a horrendous frequency which agitated or reverberated the entire plane. Can you imagine that? Because Easter Island got reverberated, them things was on the surface, and they're exactly the same 25 foot down. No coinkydink. Look at this.
All buildings.
Wow, that is incredible. To think what's
Been a
inside
global
of there.
EMP.
See that, Patrick? These are all ancient buildings. They were like big concrete buildings of some sort.
There has got to be artifacts inside of there.
Absolutely. This kind of evidence is all over the world too, man. And these are ruins. These are actually ruins. And they would have us believe, Patrick, that the ancients, they just built these big old temples and they lived in caves. They build these big old temples and they lived in caves, and that's totally nonsense. And that's why Tartaria is important, because it shows you that the ancients were far more advanced than academia has presented to us. Absolutely.
Totally agree.
Yeah, the problem is when people think of it advanced, they think of Star Wars and they think of, technology advanced. They're not thinking of natural etheric power advanced, just simply having your mind connected to what there is around you. That sort of advancement,
Absolutely.
And that's what I mean, how they've let everything into a mirror. Everything's a reflection of what it should be. It's like this cheap version. It's like, when you even think of our pineal being open and the telepathic powers that we used to have, I firmly would suggest that the tryptophan in everything, the tryptophan that's found in nature, is nature's internet. And when our pineal is active and we have enough dimethyltryptamine in our body to be able to actually connect with things, we have instinct, what they would call instinct. We can literally read the energy of the surrounding field. We can know when there's a tsunami coming, we'll all leave the area, the way the tribal people still do. So that's why we've taken so quickly to the internet, because it's natural to us to have this type of instant communication with everything. We used to have that. And people will look at that when we say they were far more advanced, they were far more technologically advanced than us. I think it was inner technology that they were using. It was a connection to the ether. It was not even what you would call technology. It was just reality. It was just the way things were, you know. And now we've been tricked and we've had that taken away from us. Now we've been given cheap imitations that they call technology, but it was just that it was what we were. It's difficult to explain. It was just a knowing. It was just how it is. It wasn't technology at all. It was just how we are, what we are, and we knew what we were, and we knew that we were connected, and we knew how to harness that. We knew how to literally communicate with the field around us, because it's all an emotional mirror, the whole thing. So we are capable of just about anything. Anything you want to. The only thing that limits your possibility of what is possible is what you believe is possible. You're limited by your belief systems, because reality could be anything we want. We can do absolutely anything we want if we simply believe in ourselves. But it's a collective thing. So they've got the collective mind of man, and they've led it down this path of complete ignorance. And I think they're falling over themselves at the moment to get us into the mainframe, which is what's causing this huge awakening, this huge surge of enlightenment that's happening, this new renaissance. They're bringing it about themselves, because it's all polarized. Everything has an equal and opposite reaction. That's the way reality works. So the more negative they make it, the more people are going to wake up, the more alive we're going to become. And it's a good thing. It's the way it has to be,
Absolutely, 100%.
Everyone knew that this place would be healed, Max, if everyone knew that. God's not listening to you. He's too busy being you.
Yeah. I often said, if people finally realize who and what they were, we could change the world in a day, literally in a day.
All would be healed. The whole thing, the whole game would be healed. If everyone knew that. Yeah.
And that's a really empowering thing. That's a really comforting thing to know.
It is.
And the more negative they make it, eventually people are going to go, hang on a minute. I don't actually have to do any of this shit. Eventually even the most mundane and programmed is going to realize that, hang on a minute, this is all fucked up,
Absolutely.
It's a good thing,
Right. What's going on here?
Consent. Yeah.
But perhaps that's what it'll take. Perhaps it's got to get that bad for them to see it, But as long as, that's our role, I think, is to provide a safety net for these people, to let them realize that it all isn't lost. It all has to be this way, because this is the only way everyone's going to wake up. It's the only possible way everyone's going to wake up. And all the people that get lost and get led into the mainframe, well, I feel real bad for them, but that's their choice. That's their sole choice. We place too much attachment on trying to save other people, when really it's a personal soul choice for everyone. That's what this comes down to. All we can do is show them that there's a doorway there. They have the choice to go through it if they want to, and maintain our energy in the right vibration, in the right state, and we'll get through this. It doesn't matter. No stake in the outcome. It's all good. Has to be this way. This is the only way it could possibly be. So yeah, I mean, just face infinity without flinching, and everything's going to be fine. You're going to get through.
So Max, me, you, Martin, we touched on this in our videos, and other people who have been avid into advocating Tartaria and mudflood research, the findings, right, with their technology right now, right? They got all the DNA. They're actually setting up these things like Ancestry.com. They're collecting people's DNA. They're probably collecting people's DNA with these swabs testing as well. It's probably multi things they're doing. What do you think is going on right now with, you think they...
Looking for someone.
Yeah, they're doing the same thing they're going to do before, right? Collected all this DNA and do the same thing all over again, but in a much more advanced level.
Yeah, I think they're looking for someone. And also, I think when you're depopulating, it's like you look at Noah's Ark. You really think Noah went and collected 2 of everything and put it on a big boat?
Yes.
Or did they go and collect the DNA of everything?
Bingo.
Put that in a little storage facility so they can recreate everybody again. That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing. And I think they're looking for someone as well. Looking for the real people. They want to know who the real people are. They want to know where all the awake people are. They're looking, I think, like I said, part of it, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a bit of a game they play, looking for the last remnants of Hyperborea, which is what I think many of us probably are. We probably come down from that line.
Yes, I get a buzz on, so I know it's true.
Yeah. It's like playing needle in the haystack, So it's a game for them. It's a game, and they play it in levels, multi-levels. It's a multi-level game.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that makes sense, Max. That makes really sense, man. It's crazy. You got the fondlings and the incubators back in the in the early in the late 1800s and the early in the mid 1800s. You got these incubators. They were, mind blowing.
Yeah, and they've taken that to the next level now. They're actually going to be breeding people out of skin cells now. They don't even need eggs and sperm. They want to breed people out of skin cells, put them in these little ectogenesis chambers, and you can grow them in your lounge room, in a little chamber. It brings a whole new perspective to the term "bun in the oven," doesn't it?
Martin, I really
Wow.
like that, that I never considered that they might be looking for someone. But to touch back on Noah's Ark, it's very sacred geometrical. What is an arc? An arc is an electrical discharge. It's a curving arc. And the letter N is a representation of a 90-degree arc. The A is a 180-degree arc. The O is a 360-degree arc. And the H itself is the covenant. I did a little animation on this. I'll share it with you afterwards, but it explains what Noah's Ark is.
You see those
So do
cave
you guys
paintings
believe in a
of
global
what they
flood that
say the
happened?
man, some sort of particular man they call him, and he's like that and it's an electrical discharge. The whole thing, it's an electrical discharge, and you ever looked at the thunderbolts of the gods, guys, and they talk about the certain discharges between different bodies and things. I mean, you could cause a mud flood through a plasma event, through an electrical discharge. You could cause a mud flood. So there's any number of ways this could have been done, whether it's a natural thing or whether it's an unnatural thing, whether they do it. But they might even have the technology and simply know how reality works and still have a lot of this ancient technology. They've simply taken it from us, and they're just running this people farm and looking for the remnants of Hyperborea, playing the game the way they want to play it.
That's it.
But it wouldn't surprise me if it was that as well.
They got the tech, they got everything you can even imagine, and they got it. This place is just, like you said, the farm, and the game is really on right now.
Oh yeah, it's definitely on.
Wilt.
But they've definitely got tech. I mean, I saw back in 2000, I saw a UFO in the sky. That's why I stopped researching UFOs and all that sort of stuff. I didn't need to know if they were real after that, because I saw one broad daylight. And it was just there in the sky. It was visible for like 5 minutes. Must have been the size of a football field, this thing. It was quite a long way away. There was a lot of atmospheric distortion. Then it just flicked off like someone flicked a light. And I thought, okay, where'd that come from? Okay, who's driving? So UFOs are real. There is something else going on here. The question is, where do they come from? Who's driving it? Is it little aliens, or is it the government? Does it come from?
I don't think it's
able to come in and out of visual reality. I mean, does it come from another dimension? I mean,
The terrestrial.
there's definitely something going on here, and I think these things, and they're just observing. How's the farm going?
they're hiding the technology that they have, like these T3.
Yeah, they've still got it all.
And they got hidden lands. They got hidden lands, like 6%.
Environment where we think that we're just these things that we are. We've got no clue.
No, not even a clue. Not even a clue.
What they've got and what they're capable of, and they are so ridiculously advanced that people would not even believe it. Even with the technology that we've got now that we're using, the cell phones and things. I mean,
it's primitive to what they have. It's primitive to what they have.
They just told us there was an industrial revolution, and they told us that they'd invented the television, and they let us see the gradual progression of this.
And they gave us dinosaurs and laughed at us at the same time. It's just mind blowing. Mind blowing.
Exactly. They already had it. You see the thing that I had recently, there was a guy called, a new guy who's gotten onto this Antiquitech stuff by the name of Paul Cook. I saw his YouTube channel.
I know Paul, yeah.
And he showed the pneumatic rail system they had beneath London, and he had a pit drawing of a guy sitting there operating a little device in a mirror, signing his ticket at a distant station in a mirror back in the 1800s.
No shit.
So they had a form of internet and everything back then as well.
Skype, evidence Skype in like 1920, and it was called Skype as well. So they bring it out now and say this is all brand new.
Yeah.
Rubbish. Wireless phones as well.
Speaking of some of the Antiquitech and things like that, and a lot of the etheric energy and cymatics and sacred geometry, and this concept that these buildings were using the four elementals to extract ether and spirit, from the source itself. I love this idea that these buildings were like healing centers where you could go in and commune with these other realms. When I was in Philadelphia at the Anarchy Conference, I had the honor of meeting Clive. Hello, Clive. And he really took me by storm when I took his all-day seminar the day after the conference, and then him and I and a few friends walked around Philadelphia and observed a bunch of the the mud flood evidence there. But I'd like to invite Clive in to talk about maybe how his ideas around healing and all of the beautiful work that he does, how Tartaria has influenced him with this idea that there's some kind of etheric energy that we're using to maybe help us heal and decalcify our pineal glands and connect to the source, and everything that Max and Martin and everyone else is talking about. I'd be curious to see what Clive's take is on how Tartaria has influenced his healing work.
Well, when I was about 20, I was in the Lebanon before the civil war started, and I went to Baalbek and spent about 3 weeks there. And immediately, the moment I arrived at Baalbek, it was obvious that giants lived there. It was impossible. You couldn't go up. The room heights were way too big. It was just ridiculous. And I also realized there was no way that it fell apart from weather. It was obvious that it had been destroyed, smashed to pieces. And I don't know whether it affected my healing. What really affected my healing, I suppose, was when I was very young. I had an out-of-body experience and was floating above my body on the ceiling. So from that point on, I had no fear of death or anything like that. And I had a lot of out-of-body experiences. And I think clearly having no fear of death helps an awful lot. I wouldn't want to suffer, but dying isn't a problem because one doesn't. I mean, we are highly explosive. What are we mainly? People say, "Oh, you're carbon-based life form." Okay, well, that may be true on one level, but really, we're water, aren't we? We're mainly water, and out of that, we're mainly hydrogen. So we're, arguably 62% hydrogen, and everything else like vitamins and minerals. That's only 2% of us actually. And so, what is pH, for example? It's potential hydrogen. I mentioned this partly because it's been on my radar for the last couple of weeks because I've been receiving lots and lots of videos of people who are shaking with Parkinson's disease. They're breathing hydrogen and oxygen mixed, and within roughly 2 hours, shaking stops. They're not falling over anymore. Absolutely amazing. And they were using this hydrogen technology in China. When the whole Wuhan thing was going on, they were putting people on respirators. They've written books now where they put people on the hydroxy machines and nobody died at all. So there's some very interesting technology around, but the technology I use mainly is Tesla technology. I was working with a medical doctor some 20 odd years ago, and he told me that Tesla made healing devices. And I bought an old one, started using them. I can show you what they look like.
Awesome.
Like shine the light.
Yeah, well, he's getting that. When I was at when I took his seminar, he had all these devices, and I was able to play with them up close, and I was totally blown away by Clive and all his gadgets and stuff. And I think he actually had a piece that was manufactured by Tesla's production company, if I remember. Is that right, Clive?
Are you serious?
The ones that I brought to Philadelphia were made with Tesla's principles in mind, but made by other people. Tesla had his own company for a long time, but I'm using slightly later designs. This one is sort of late 20s, early 30s. And the first time I used one of these was somebody who had been unable to drive from a neck injury. I used the machine for 10 minutes, and 3 months of not being able to drive, he could move his neck, everything was fine immediately. Then the next person I treated was this guy who he'd been a DJ, and he explained to me that he'd seen a speaker column about to collapse on this young girl, and he managed to run to the speaker column, prop it up, but crush 3 vertebrae in the process. And I met him at a party, and he explained to me that the only reason he was at the party was morphine, taking so many drugs, he got out of pain enough to be sociable. And so I treated him for 45 minutes. So I had another machine in the back of my car, and he gets up and he says, "It's gone." I said, "What do you mean it's gone?" So, "Well, the pain of 20 years, it's gone." So we're at a party. I said, "Look, take it really easy. Don't do anything." Anyway, he rings me up 8 o'clock the next morning You know something's happened when they ring up at 8 o'clock in the morning on the dot. He said, Clive, I had the best night ever. I danced all night. I thought, oh, fuck. And he said, I'm in more pain now than I've ever been. Come back and treat me again. So I go back and treat him another time. And he then stays out of pain for another 2 years. And so people have this imagination that old technology is not going to be as good as new technology. But I've got all sorts of new technology, but I'm using stuff from the 1920s, which is phenomenal.
With that idea, with that technology maybe being connected to Tesla and being one generation away from the Tartarian era, how would you explain to the layman what's happening with the tech? Like what kind of devices, what are they making? Are they creating electromagnetic fields? Or if you want to explain maybe on a layman level, what's happening with that and how it might be connected to some of this lost Tartarian technology?
Well, it's super easy in a way, because what do we run on? Well, we run on photons and electrons primarily. We can do without photons pretty much, but we need electrons to run. When we do exercise, we're creating electrons. When we touch the ground barefoot or we paddle in the sea, electrons are piling into us. And what Tesla was about was putting in electrons like times 1,000. So with some of these technologies, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes is all you need to charge the body's cells up, and bam, a cell sort of a bit dodgy suddenly becomes fine, just like that.
So you're empowering the body with these electrons. That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's pretty simple, and very effective. I mean, vitamin C creates electrons in the body. So I think what people need to know now is how not to cough in public. I could see, a witch hunt going on. You cough in public, and somebody says, "Oh, they've got this nasty disease," and it's so simple to be healthy. I mean, actually, when it really comes down to it, 15 years ago, when I first started a supplement company, I had about 100 supplements on the list. Now I've really got about 15 or so, because actually, when it really comes down to it, you're not low on herbs, probably, but we're all low on vitamins, we're all low on minerals and amino acids and fats. So I realized, for myself, about 15 years ago, I woke up to the fact I was low on vitamin D. I started taking 10,000 IUs of vitamin D just in winter when there was no sunshine, and I haven't had a sniffle since. I used to get colds every year. Never had one since. All it was for me was vitamin D. Some people, maybe they need a bit of zinc. If you're really low on zinc, you might notice little white dots on your fingernails. And everybody's low on vitamin C because food isn't fresh anymore. Minerals last forever. You can set fire to minerals and they're still there at the end of it. But vitamins, they deteriorate in the first 24 hours after you've picked the red pepper or whatever it is. So everybody's low on vitamins. So the people who take vitamin C, their lives can be changed. First, I was in hospital 35 years ago, and they said there's no hope. Nothing can be done for you. You're going to be, but they were completely wrong. I was just low on vitamins and minerals. And then a friend of my dad's, who was a New York banker, he got cancer for the second time. And he said to me, look, I've got 12 weeks to live. This is what they tell me. Anyway, he heard what I'd done to get better. And he rang up Linus Pauling, the only guy to win the Nobel Prize twice. And Linus Pauling said, look, you've got cancer. Take 35 grams of vitamin C in divided doses every day, which he did. And he died 20 years later.
Wow. Hey, what's your thoughts on two questions for you? Wilhelm Reich's research connected to your work, and also I'm fascinated with Edgar Cayce and the sleeping prophet idea, where he was healing people by going into a trance. I actually went to visit his museum in Virginia Beach and was blown away by it. And but this beautiful idea that you can go into some trance state like Edgar Cayce did and heal from a distance. So Wilhelm Reich's science, it's really based, two different ideas, but a similar thing, kind of connected to your work.
Well, Edgar Cayce, his work, he had a scribe who wrote everything he'd ever said in the trance down. And there was one thing he recommended more than everything else from a health perspective. He recommended over 900 times, which is the Tesla technology. specifically. I'll just show you another one.
What is it that he referenced 900 times?
High frequency devices.
Oh, wow. So when I was at his museum, or his, the place in Virginia Beach, they had an enormous wall of all the scribes of every session he ever did. It was a facsimile, but in all those documents, he referenced this technology 900 times. And here you are representing. You're amazing, Clive. I love you.
Oh, thank you, Watson, for introducing us to Clive.
Oh, he's one of my heroes. We had a great time together.
We did.
Thank you, Clive.
Yeah, thank you, Watson. So yeah.
Well, real quick, could you wrap up how your ideas and your research and your ideology, philosophies connected to some of the lost tech of Tartaria, since this conversation is overarchingly about some of the hidden magic of Tartaria?
Well, clearly, I use frequency devices, along with nutrients, and so clearly frequency is everything, and we are what we think. Clearly we're sharing this reality, creating it on a shared basis, but I know from my own life that what you think happens. I have created in my life so many things that actually, it was my dream, and I realized that most people don't have a dream. They're lost. But if you have a dream and you want to create it and you're willing to put in the effort, my experience is I've created exactly what I wanted, and you have to be careful what you wish for. But with Wilhelm Reich, I've got a Wilhelm Reich blanket, which you wrap around yourself.
Oh, cool.
And the principle is that we are taking in energy and reflecting it out, and that by wrapping yourself in the blanket, you're not losing your own energy.
What is the blanket made out of?
It's made out of wool, and in this case, it's a layer of plastic. The idea was just to shield yourself. Wilhelm Reich would put you in a cabinet.
Is it like a Faraday cage to keep the energy within you, like a Faraday blanket, maybe, of sorts?
Well, yes, you might say.
Reverse.
I'm not an expert in the Wilhelm Reich technology, but I have seen it work. But of all the technology I've tried, the stuff from Russia is second best, and what's ascribed to Tesla is the best I've found. And I've read so much of his work because he wrote an awful lot. It's a bit like looking at the origin of Bitcoin. For a year or so before the release of Bitcoin, you could see Satoshi communicating with all the other cryptographers around the world. So it's something we need to bring back. I mean, what happened in America was this technology came out. The big machine I showed you, they were in every hospital in the world, right? Every hospital in the world had them. And by about 1910, the smaller set that I showed you, they were in the pharmacies worldwide. And the pharmaceutical industry began to realize they were losing profits because people were fixing their own health at home. Can't have that. And so the American government started being pressured by the doctors and by the pharmaceutical industry, and they started arresting the people. They were caught. Everything closed down. A lot of it closed down in the Great Depression. A lot of the companies just went bust, and then the American government made sure that all the others went out of business. And then with the big machines, they were interfering with radio, which had come in. So they switched it from long wave, which that is, to shortwave, and then people started dying, and they stopped using the technology the way they did. But they still, it's called diathermy. They still use diathermy for eye operations and so on, because diathermy will cut without bleeding using electricity.
To wrap up this little section, all of that stuff was fantastic. You always inspire me. On a hopeful note, again, like focusing on the light, the idea of organite and cloudbusters. Wilhelm Reich was famous for having one of his last experiments was that cloudbuster, supposedly that can, with this idea that you can use that technology to maybe clean the air full of geoengineering or chemtrails, or you can project them towards the 5G tech towers and disrupt the signal. Is there any hope that maybe the illuminated resistance or this resistance, if we were actually focused and harnessed, that we could use some of that Wilhelm Reich tech to, to disempower some of the geoengineering and the 5G tech towers, or anything along those lines with organite?
I'm not convinced by organize, but I think a lot of it's belief. I think if you believe you can bust a cloud, you probably can. But there's the Ciba-Geigy effect. Ciba-Geigy effect is where Ciba-Geigy took these genetically modified seeds and wanted to see if they put them in an electrostatic field, what might happen to the seeds. And they reverted them back, not to how they'd been prior to the genetic modification, but they reverted seeds right back to like Stone Age sort of times.
Wow. What's that term called?
Ciba-Geigy, C-I-B-A, Geigy, G-E-I-G-Y, I think. And so could it be that they could use frequency? Let's say somebody's been injected with a genetic modification agent, so-called vaccine. Could it be reversed? I mean, I really don't know, but I prefer to stay absolutely optimistic, hopeful. I think this, it all could be absolutely wonderful. Yes, it might get a bit bad before it gets wonderful, but rather than be depressed, which I've tried depression, I didn't like that.
Yeah.
It's really important to be super positive. Like the rest of you, I don't wear a mask and I smile at everybody.
Yeah, I agree, man. I'm an optimist, but a realist at the same time. But with all that stated, thank you for stepping in. And you said so much. If anybody wants to come in and respond to some of Clive's ideas and take it into another territory, feel free to step forward.
I think there's a lot in the healing with electricity and electromagnetism. I used to see, I had one of those kits, or a friend of mine had one of those kits with the little glass ends on it that you hooked up to it had its own power in the box, similar to one of those suitcases you showed there. And I'm always kicked myself that I never kept hold of that thing. It was about probably 30 years ago, but yeah, my girlfriend had one. But anyway, I think the church, this is what churches were for as well. I think churches were electrical power stations and they were healing places. So they had the organs in there. Why do they call them organs? It's organ music. It's for your organs. You get in the standing wave between the four big church organs and you stand there in that sound frequency and it will heal you. I think through frequency and if we can understand frequency and how it works, how electricity really works, the true etheric electricity, and when combined with sound waves, which was very enlightening what Martin said before about the bells. I hadn't thought about that, because how would you get the vibration into the resonator? Well, a bell, of course, that's how you would do it. That's why they had the bells, and that's why they had to recharge them.
They destroyed all the bells in World War I and II of Europe.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that makes perfect sense of how you would get the vibration in there, through sound or vibration. That's all it would take. You could probably even use water. I mean, there'd be all sorts of different ways you could get the vibration into these resonators. But I think that we can heal all of this stuff. I think we could literally change the coding of our DNA ourselves if we knew how to harness the energy, knew how to harness the electricity, how to harness the sound, how to harness these resonators. I think we can change just about anything, and we can heal all the damage that's been done. I think if we can find out how to reconnect ourselves and how to turn a lot of this old antiquitech back on.
Right. Hey, one thing, Max, that really inspired me. And Clive, you brought up the astral projection. I'd love to, on the note of sound, I used to, back in the 90s and my 20s, I used to have spontaneous out of projection OBEs for almost a decade. But the technique that I developed, that when I was in my body and I felt like I was like in a lucid state, I would actually fall back and surrender to the sound, to the source field itself, or to that transcendental om. And the moment that I would merge with the sound, like the fabric of the quantum field itself, that's when my body would lift out. So I would let go and fall into that transcendental om, that tone, and that's when I could lift out. And I used to teach people that if they wanted to do astral projection, they first had to learn lucid, how to become lucid, and then they had to fall into the sound. So here we are talking about sound and cymatics, and my technique and advice is, if you want to cultivate an astral, the ability to project, you have to fall into the tone, the sound, the fabric of the source field itself. So with that stated, again, celebrating sound as a way to access these realms.
And just for Max, I've got one of these machines in Australia, and if you want to try one out, I can send you one.
You've got one here in Australia.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm. So if you want to
Well,
try one,
definitely.
That's awesome.
so you
Yeah,
probably
definitely. Will connect with me about that. Definitely, I'd love to.
Clive, are you still stateside in
Have I got
Florida,
one?
or have you moved back to Europe?
Yeah, no, I'm back in England now.
Okay.
You know, the country's in lockdown, but like I think you were saying, I'm totally not affected by it. I pay no attention to it whatsoever, and everything's fine.
That's right.
That's lovely. If you're interested in the Tesla tech, get in touch with me, because my hobby for many years has been tracking these devices down and getting them restored.
Clive, is it true that they're charging people £5,000 if they try to leave the UK right now?
Yeah, but if you're rich, it's just like a fee.
Well, right, or if it's work or whatever, there's a bunch of excuses I think you can have, but that's just a crazy idea that you can't leave. And that's written down. It's just mind blowing to me.
Yeah, well, they don't have to make actual laws. They just tell people not to do it, and they obey these days. Sheep.
That's true.
I think what people don't realize is the vaccine passports are really the Chinese social credit system. You know, if they roll out the vaccine passports, I think, you know, it's not going to be good.
Yeah.
So, control.
It's interesting that how they've got to do all this stuff. There's all this fear that China's taking us over, so we need to improve our surveillance and everything. So, in order to protect us from the Chinese social crediting system being introduced in our country, we need to introduce it ourselves. Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? You know? It's a joke. I don't think a lot of people are going to go along with it, though. I really don't. I think a lot of people aren't. It's like that gym in, it's like I mentioned before, CP Fitness or whatever it's called, where they're saying they won't accept any vaccinated people in their gym because of their insurance policy. So, unfortunately, they can't accept you in their gym until the clinical trials are over in 2023.
Love it.
So, I mean, you're not going to get these people getting vaccine passports. And, you know, so a lot of people, I think even the vaccine passports is what's going to bring a lot of the police, a lot of the military, a lot of the health workers, a lot of government workers. It's going to bring them all over onto our side, because they're all going to be going, hang on a minute, I didn't sign up for this. You know, I don't mind having vaccines, but I'm being forced to. Hang on, what's going on here? So I think that's where they're going to really fall down, because people just aren't going to go along with it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you know what, Max? They'll keep pushing that envelope as far as they can push it. And that's what's going on. You see here, they're just having fun. They're mocking us. They're laughing. They're telling us to wear 3 masks now and get anal swabs. You die like that.
Just 14 days to flatten the curve, Richard. That's all it is, brother. 14 days to flatten the curve, mate. It'll all go away soon.
Yeah, like they say, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile, but they'll take that mile inch by inch.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. That's what they do.
Hey, to keep the conversation on Tartaria, one of my favorite recent shows is the one that Richard Lopez did with Martin. It's like a 4-hour epic show on Tartarian airships, and I think it's part of the vanguard of a lot of this Tartarian research. One of the things that inspires me is this idea that the steampunk ethos and occult ideas around this fake science or this science fiction genre was actually arguably maybe the true transcendental science of Tartaria. Would you like Richard to step in and maybe talk about some of that airship ideas, and maybe Martin can add in, and Max could add his thoughts on that idea that they were actually blimps in this in the air and all that stuff?
Yeah, hey, thanks for that. To watching, yes, me and Martin, Max, we did a video. If you get a chance to, it's really nice.
It's epic.
It's epic. YouTube, of course, they blocked me from my main channel, so I had a backup channel, but it's called Tartarian Airships. And me and Martin, yeah, we killed it on there. It was really nice. These steampunk, engines. That's how these people got around. You would think like they would sell us. Oh, it took them like 2 months and like 6 months to get to these places by traveling on horseback. It's all nonsense. These people, they had these bell towers. You see what are bell towers? Where they literally, these airships, they had airships that flying all over the world that was connecting to these bell towers, and they was able to dock down and go up and down the steps into the airships. That's how they traveled around the world. And they got, yeah, there you go.
Like
there
so.
you go.
Nice, Mark.
Oh, yeah, check it out, Martin.
I'll bring it up.
Amazing, man. These images are incredible. Like the blimp stuff, just I'll say quickly, has completely captured my imagination, being an artist and a poet, philosopher, you know, kind of romanticizing that era. And this has really taken me by storm.
So the idea is, you know, in Tartaria, we see a lot of these buildings have these unexplained gantries at the top, which are just like, you know, a little balustrade and a little, you know, sort of observation point on the top of these buildings. They make no sense. So we think that they all had these airships. We think vanilla skies is because they're blacking out the sky so we don't see what's in them. And they're just stepping off. You know, we see this on the top of the Empire State Building they were doing here, and skyscrapers in LA as well. The Empire State the Statue of Liberty, the Eiffel Tower, excuse me. But basically, did you know the Grassbury went all the way across the Atlantic, only a few feet above the water? That must have been delightful. But what I discovered back years ago, I had this photograph of San Francisco in devastation in 1906, and there was a blimp in the air, and it was fantastical. It was like a pirate ship. It was like steampunk.
Yes.
Yeah, and I've done some research into it, but like I had two of these photographs. It was in one, and when you look into it, they say, oh, it's a ship that's been put into photographs called the Ophelia, HMS Ophelia, and there's another one too. Excuse me. But we think, you know, a lot of these crystal palaces from these great expositions and a lot of these massive railway terminals as well, they were big enough to, you know, house these giant balloons. And why wouldn't you travel? And if you jumped to jet stream, they would be super, super quick. If you weren't taking, you know, they publicize, you know, the round the world race to get to Australia using cutties and all of that. And the fact remains, they had balloons at the same time, which could do it in a fraction of the time, but they don't tell you. They tell you about, you know, the 8-month voyage of the ship to Australia. You know, drive your train on, literally, you know, this big. Fantastical.
It just makes me happy. I just giggle with joy thinking about how beautiful and fun that must have been in that era, that time of exploration. So thank you for charging me with this research, Martin. It's just really beautiful.
Field. I was just wondering what these ports were and all of these unexplained things on the top of all these Tartaria buildings. And I was thinking, well, if you packed a balloon like they were doing in San Francisco and New York and LA, and then you just stepped out and went down a staircase, you would deliver yourself straight into the street. That makes perfect sense. And then I wondered why the streets were so broad and wide for just horse and cart. And I thought, oh yeah, if you get a blimp down them, or a dirigible, no doubt about it. So was it like this, guys? Was it this? You know, I think the clues are in the movies. You ever seen Sky Captain? Yeah, The Worlds of Tomorrow, where they replicate fashion. So it's a futuristic fashion. They're all in 1940s clothes, but they got tech like this. Solar arrays and all they were using in the turn of the century.
So I'm going to show him. Yeah, go ahead. You get that one. I'm going to get something ready.
And I've got evidence of in 1700s. I think the Wright brothers definitely a psyop. This is a Springfield famous photograph, but it's fake. That's just planted in. You know, this bloke haven't even looked around. There's a plane going past. There's never been one before. And horses aren't, you know, bucking or nothing's happening, no shadow. That plane's not there. So, you know, we got evidence that they had planes before. This is just all like for the new generation, all brainwashed away from the way the world was. And it was fantastical.
Hey, tell the audience how they used to dodge and burn the old photos and they were just white skies and you can actually see like that dodge and burn effect. Yeah, talk about that real quick.
Yeah, well, I caught it myself, UAP have caught it. We find in certain era, like some photographs from around the 1850s and in this certain hue, and there's no people. Everyone's missing. You get a little bit later, but what you find is there's never any clouds and it's always a blank sky. But we've seen on sides of some buildings, you know, a little bit where it's just missing and where they've done a really, really poor Photoshop job. So they, I think they're hiding tech off the roofs as well. Some of these aerials, you know, these anomalous aerials, tops of buildings. That's a nice. Yeah. So
I can show you a picture of an airplane prior to the Wright brothers, if you want to see one.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm trying.
There was that Indian guy as well. You heard of that Indian guy who created a flying craft using a mercury drive motor?
It says
Is it
host
that got-
disabled
That
participants.
was before the Wright
screen
brothers, and they said, "Oh no, this isn't possible," and they basically canned his invention and said it's not
I
possible.
bet.
And it was a Mercury drive. I can't remember, but if you look up Indian first flight India, if you do a search for that, you should find this guy. And it was 30 or 40 years, I think, before the Wright brothers, or maybe 20, but I don't know. It was before the Wright brothers anyway. And he used mercury, which is one of the reasons they banned mercury. It's such a dangerous substance. None of us can have any mercury. I had a bottle of mercury I used to play with when I was a kid. I never ended up getting sick from it. But you can create free energy. You can create like red mercury, which is healing. Mercury is key to, I think, to a lot of this old tech. So that'd be interesting. Yeah.
100%.
Could somebody just not allow me to do the screen sharing? Somebody needs to press a button, the host.
Yep, I'm on it right now.
Okay.
I have to just make you a co-host.
Yep.
Should be good to go.
Okay. So here, this is compressed air vehicles, and they were using tromps, which I can explain if you don't know what a tromp is. And this flight was a compressed air airplane 4 years before the Wright brothers. These are submarines, tunnel boring machines. I think Martin has shown these pictures of the early tube trains in London working on compressed air. And there were cars. Chicago ran massive machines on compressed air. Paris, up until the 1960s, there were tromp offices around Paris, over 200 of them, where you could take a large parcel and shove them in a pneumatic tube and send it to any of the 200 offices around Paris in less than 2 hours. And it was fairly recently some of the turbines that were running them. But the Vatican was famous for tromps because they had apparently these giant wooden doors covered in gold, which are way too big for any humans to open. And they would open automatically. And what they'd done is they'd diverted a river. And if to make a tromp, you get a tube going downwards, and you have lots of pipes. So as you divert the river, dig a dirty great big hole, drop a pipe down, it's got tubes in. So when water reflows down these tubes, it sucks air in, then it comes back up again and is connected into a cylinder. So the water and the air come into the cylinder, the air rises to the top, then it put a tap on the top to take the compressed air off. So they were running all sorts of vehicles. Show you. Cars, the Chicago Compressed Air Company, almost completely written out of history. And they could go a couple of 100 miles. It's not as though they were slow. Double-decker trams in Paris. You can see the bottle of compressed air. It's just one of many technologies. So Chicago were running all sorts of manufacturing equipment on compressed air. And you go to the tire shop, they're still using compressed air. And it's used significantly. So they were diverting rivers to power cities. And again, a complete, so a compressed air, there's almost nothing wrong with it if you're using water to compress the air. It's close to free energy. So they didn't want anybody to have that, of course.
That's right.
I think that's how they're running aircraft now, like jet
That's
motors.
right.
I think
Just
they
gonna
run on
say that.
fuel.
100%.
Maybe they use kerosene to kick them in to start them, but once they get going, I think they run off compressed air. I mean, you can't fit all that fuel in the wings; it doesn't make sense.
That's right.
You can't even walk on the wings. All the landing gears in the wings, where they put all the fuel. And how would a plane even be able to fly when it's holding that much fuel in the wings that you can't?
Yeah, the jet fuel hoax. Richard was telling me that the next show he wants to do is on the jet fuel. So
the jet fuel hoax.
yeah, you guys should get on Richard's next show, and it's all going to be about the jet fuel hoax. So totally agree, Max.
It's mind blowing, dude. It's mind blowing, the jet fuel, because I'm a firefighter as well. So you have to take a baffling, right? So these big commercial airlines are not putting, where they're putting the fuel at. They're not putting in the fuselage, and they're not putting in the aluminum wings. And
well, I can sort of answer that.
It's a liquid.
I used to hang around with some of the super rich for a while, and we took a Gulfstream 4 out to Australia. And I remember stopping at the airport and watching the fuel tanker come out and watching the little dial going around, just like when you go fill up the car, you know, $18,000 worth of fuel.
Right.
There was a lot of fuel going into that.
I know, but here's what I'm saying is, what if I'm saying if that was just a prop? That's what I'm saying. Where you're stopping on the tarmac, you see a little fuel truck, they connect. Here's what I'm saying.
You're going to need fuel to run a propeller plane, but if you've got jet engines, well, it makes sense. I think the jet engines, once they get going, they suck air in the front and they compress it and they shoot it out the back.
That's right.
But a prop plane, sure, will need $1,800 worth of fuel to fly. So
absolutely.
Yep. That's a whole different technology.
Yes.
But if you came out on a jet plane, I don't think they use jet fuel. I really don't.
This is just an example of a tromp where a river is coming in at the top and then going down.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant, this guy. Absolutely brilliant. Fantastic stuff.
Right there. That's how they were getting around. So let me share you what I'm going to share you the beginning of this, and when you get a chance to, so everybody can see this, everybody on the board. It's a video that me and Martin did called Tartarian Airships. I'll just play you the small part of the introduction, and we'll leave a link in and make sure that you get it. Here, so let me share the screen now.
Researchers such as John Levi, Martin Leidtke, and others have repeatedly pointed out that almost all of the photographs from the 1800s seem to have the sky purposely doctored to blur it out. Notice how you can never see any clouds, distant hills, or land on the horizon, the sun even. And on some of them, you can even see the sloppy, pixelated cuts around the buildings. Are they purposely hiding something? And if so, what and why? We have also noticed that churches and older structures around Scandinavia, and the rest of the world for that matter, all have large open belfries, but with no bells in them. They also seem to have human-sized arches and platforms, much like old skyscrapers and towers such as the Empire State Building and the Eiffel Tower. They have them very near the top. Is it possible both questions have the same simple answer? As always, the topics we touch on in our videos are our own musings and should be taken as such. Do your own research and come to your own conclusions. There was obviously something in the skies that they didn't want us to see. Were there commonplace atmospheric anomalies that would seem strange to us today? Were there literally no clouds or sun? Were there flying rainbow unicorns? Probably not. But what if the skies were full of airships? This might sound absurd at first, but consider this. All of the old world maps made by the early to late 1500 cartographers are in perfect proportions with modern maps that are allegedly done by aerial photography and satellite imagery. They even have major and minor rivers mapped out in dense, impenetrable jungle and forest regions. They even have coastlines and areas mapped out in places we had allegedly never even discovered or explored at that time. The only way this could be done is from the air. You would need a craft that can go slow enough to map out the terrain, fly high enough for area perspective, and low enough to see details. You would also need a whole fleet of these to map out the whole world.
All right, well, I'm going to stop it right there. And we'll leave a link to the video, but I wanted to show you, Max, that this rabbit hole gets even deeper, man. And they hid a lot of stuff from us. And you know what really woke me up was how when they drew the maps. Like, how the hell did they draw the maps so detailed? I mean, because they were flying around. You know what I mean? Like, you know.
Aerial perspective, you know. All the maps are from an aerial perspective. So, like, them lead atlases take an eternity to do, and somebody's doing it from the air. Try doing that in your mind. It's impossible. So they have to be up in the air. There's no other explanation for it.
Right. And then we
Oh yeah, they could absolutely fly. They could absolutely fly. I mean, there's evidence of that everywhere. I've long supported that notion that they had flying machines everywhere, and probably all different types of flying machines. That was a great little introduction you did there, and that does explain, you know, why they've got these little hickeys on the top of all these buildings. I mean, what are they all doing there? You know, what for? Decoration? Nah, you know.
Right. Yeah, you could just get up and go where you want. That was a common thing to do. Come to find out, right? It's just mind blowing. You know.
Yeah, nothing is what we're told. It's incredible. I mean, you do kind of pine for the ancient tech when you look at the pictures of the old world and you realize just what we had and what's been taken from us and how recently it was done. But again, that's kind of encouraging, the fact that it was only a couple of hundred years ago we had all this tech. So, and there would be people around that still know about this and still know how this works. So all we've got to do is establish the freedom we need to reestablish this. So yeah, and that's what's happening now. Like I said, it's a new renaissance. So as much as they're trying to pull everyone into this world, as much as a lot of people are going to go there, there's going to be a lot of us that don't. And so that's going to be a really opportunistic time for us. So yeah, I mean, this is a time of great opportunity. So I say bring it on, you know, bring it all on, because you're going to create the shift that we want. And it will go in the direction we want. I mean, I think the human race is incredibly powerful. Human beings are incredibly powerful. And through all of this, people are rediscovering themselves. And all the ones that aren't, well, that's fine. They'll just go where they're going to go. And we don't need them to wake up anyway. You know, we can do it ourselves. So yeah, really positive time, really, when you look at it.
Hey, Max, one of the questions I wanted to ask you, with the photographic evidence that's allowing us to discover this Tartarian narrative, one of the things I found interesting, I took photography when I was in school and learned about photography back during that analog era, you know, pre-digital photography. But this idea, when a lot of that photographic evidence started hitting in the 1850s, the resolution was really high quality. And it begs the question that maybe they had the technology, photographic technology, long before that. And do you think that if that's true, if it went back deeper into our past, that there might be hidden photographs of centuries that go back, and maybe photographic evidence has been hidden from us of that Tartarian era? Imagine gazing upon photographs of that era from a few hundred years ago. What's your thoughts on the idea?
It wouldn't surprise me at all. It wouldn't surprise me at all. You looked into the work of Leonardo da Vinci and realized that his paintings were impossible to paint because of the thickness of the paint.
What is that about I've heard that narrative about the Mona Lisa, that they put they've looked at it on a microscopic level, and supposedly it's so thin that it's impossible.
It's less than a micron. It's one micron thick. The oil painting is 1 micron thick. We can't even laser print in more than one color that is over, like a colored laser print is about 3 microns.
So it suggests the idea that they weren't painted. They were some other tech. Yeah.
Yes, so there was other tech there. They almost, and they're so realistic, they almost look like photographs, you know, and the paint is less than 1 micron thick, and we don't have the technology to do that. So how did he paint? That's why no one can ever forge a Leonardo da Vinci painting, because all they got to do is check the thickness of the paint, and you can't do it. There's no, even if you were to water all the colors down as far as you can and get them as thin as possible before you apply them, there's no way you can get a painting with that amount of color in it to be only 1 micron thick. So that was technology they used to do that, whatever it was. So
can you imagine if there's photographs of Tartaria like 300 or 400 years ago that someday we might discover?
Yeah.
The Roman statues.
Yeah, how about the idea that like Bernini, the sculptor that did a lot of those amazing sculptors, and David the Michelangelo masterpieces, that could have been some kind of tech too? That fascinates me because I was a sculpture student for 2 or 3 years. I was literally majoring in sculpture and painting. And I was fascinated by the idea that I couldn't even fathom how they were able to sculpt some of those masterpieces like Bernini, who is one of my heroes since my 20s. But what's your thoughts that could have been some kind of antiquitech or some kind of laser printing or some ideas like that? What's your thoughts on that, Max?
Could have been 3D printing.
Yeah.
Could have been. I even question whether some of the ancient buildings, such as what is it in Cambodia, Angkor Wat, looks 3D printed. I mean, these buildings look like they were 3D printed.
It's too perfect.
Yeah, I mean, you've got these incredible long buildings with this incredible detail, repeated, and every square inch of the place is decorated. I mean, how would you do that and get it so perfect? So it wouldn't surprise me at all if some of them were 3D printed. Not at all. I mean, the technology, I think they had technology far better than what we've got now. I mean, like I said, it was earth-based. It wasn't reversed. And we didn't think of it as technology. It was simply the way things were. So, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Some of these sculptures, I mean, some of the sculptures you see there's a woman there with a veil falling over her.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. That's Bernini.
Yes.
Yeah, and the guy.
If you want to see the most amazing stuff, it's all Bernini's work. Is the stuff with the veils and all the whatever Martin's showing here. This stuff is exquisite.
Yeah, this is on point.
The fishing net as well. The guy with the fisherman.
Astounding.
How do you possibly?
It's impossible.
Do that?
I was a sculptor. I tried to sculpt in stone, and I was, for a few years I studied it, and there's no one was replicating that stuff. We were all, entrenched in modern art. We weren't even trying to emulate the masters. We were doing, artwork that was based in a lot of contemporary 20th century ideas. We weren't trying to do this realism and stuff like that. And I think it definitely, at this point, from my perspective, it had to have been some tech involved, because that stuff was impossible to would have been impossible to sculpt.
And watching, they still can't. They can't even do it now. They can't even replicate it.
No,
they can't even replicate it now.
I could jump in for a quick second. Got a quick question and something to fill in, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, am I? Hopefully, I'm coming in good volume wise. Yeah, you talked about what if there was like photography from Tartaria or something like that, and I don't know if you had heard, but like back in South America, I forget exactly where, it was Maya, Inca, something like that. They would create the pottery on a spinning disc, and it's effectively the same as how a record works, in the sense that you kind of end up putting grooves into a disc and then you could play it back. And so actually they were able to then, it's a kind of shoddy sounding, but they actually did capture, scientists have basically been able to replay audio that was effectively captured in the clay of these pots, basically, that they made at the time.
Heard that.
And you can hear like dogs barking and kids playing in the background and all this kind of stuff. I'm talking hundreds of years old, if not thousands. I really have to look that up again. But back to the tech part, there's the Baghdad battery, which is basically, it has a rod and battery acid effectively in it, in like a pot that's 1,800 years old, something like that. But you had briefly mentioned, Max, the potential for like a plasma cosmological explanation to the mud flood theory. And I recently have been thinking about that myself, and I not to discount the mud flood theory, but I think that there are alternate explanations. And I don't know, as the 10th Doctor, if everybody else is agreeing, somebody has to disagree, right? So what are your thoughts on that? Or do you think that there's it's a stronger argument, less strong argument, in terms of kind of a more magnetic shift type of thing that could have caused a very similar flooding and mud flood type of scenario?
Well, I think the entire world is electrical and electromagnetic. I think everything's electromagnetic. I think gravity's electromagnetic. Everything is electromagnetic. So
I'm increasingly agreeing with you, and I think a lot of scientists are actually starting to come around to that, oddly enough. But yeah, continue.
I mean, people say, "Oh, gravity doesn't exist." Well, it's a name we give for the fact that things fall. So yeah, gravity exists. It's what causes it, and I think it's electromagnetism is what causes it. And when you think about that, it's an electrical universe. There could be times when there's little glitches in the system. There could be times when any type of plasma discharge could cause. I mean, even if you go into an earthquake, you realize that the ground liquefies in an earthquake. What causes earthquakes? Is it from tectonic plate shifting, or is it some sort of electromagnetic thing that happens? So I think when we start thinking of the electrical universe and electromagnetics, a lot of things sort of fall into place. And as we're sort of only just really discovering that this is how the world works and this is how the universe works, I mean, I think we're just, like I said, we're just discovering it. So um, any number of possibilities to how this happens, but I think it's more feasible to think of electromagnetics causing something like the mud flood and something like these resets happening. Maybe there's a group of people who are experimenting who still know about this technology, who are trying things, and shit happens and it just goes wrong, or maybe it's naturally occurring things that just happen because it's an electromagnetic universe. I don't know. I mean, like I said, it's something that we're figuring out, but I think electromagnetics, if you can apply that to reality, it changes everything, and it changes the perspective of everything. And I think that's how everything works, is electromagnetics and electrical.
I agree with you, Max. When I took your seminar at the Anarchy conference, which was an honor to be there, you had talked about, the big picture, with all this stuff. It was like graduate level Tartaria narrative, but you had brought up that idea of solar maximums and minimums. Could you talk about that? That was the first time I really heard about that. And when I heard you extrapolate those ideas, I finally got what you were talking about. But maybe share that a little bit, how that's connected to just what you're talking about.
Well, with
Solar
solar
maximum
minimums,
and minimum.
well, solar minimums are when you have a limited sunspot activity, which affects all the electromagnetics on Earth, and it affects the temperature, it affects the climate, it affects everything. Solar maximums and solar minimums. So then, what is the sun? How is the sun really this big ball of hydrogen or helium or whatever they say it is that's just burning the way it is, or is that electromagnetic? Is it phosphorus? If you start really looking into the nature of phosphorus and how that affects things electrically. Yeah, it's all connected. I mean, I've got a lot of different perspectives and things than what I had when I was in Philadelphia a couple of years ago, because so much has come out. I mean, we're getting bombarded with more and more information all the time. So nothing is really set in stone. I don't have any sort of belief system that I need to uphold or adhere to. I'm not trying to prove any one point.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get to the bottom of what's going on.
You had mentioned
But,
this idea that in the solar minimum that there might be an energetic dip, and that there's an electromagnetic discharge and then a recharging that has the sun go back in. And during that time, there might be some kind of effects that could have caused a liquefaction or some kind of plasma discharge. I remember some ideas around that.
well, yeah, I mean, anything could cause it. That's the thing. But it's thinking of things electromagnetically is the difference. Thinking that we have an actually electromagnetic relationship with the sun. It isn't just this thing there that brings us heat. There's actually an electromagnetic thing going on all the time. So, what we're doing here could well affect that. You might find some of the tech that they're using, some of the experiments that they're running and not telling us about, may indeed cause some sort of a reaction between us and the sun. So that could cause any type of discharge. I mean, the guys from the Thunderbolts of the God have really got Thunderbolts of the Gods have got some really interesting perspectives.
I
And
love
we've
those
got to,
videos.
yeah, you got to look at all this stuff too. I mean, don't completely believe that story, but there's elements in there that may well be completely correct, that can be applied to elements of whatever other theory someone else has got.
Yeah,
And too many
the
people
electric
get in
universe
these
stuff.
theories. Yeah, too many people get in these theories, and that's it. They get tunnel vision, and it's this theory, and that's all they can focus on. The beauty of us is we can step back and look at it, and we can, not having any particular theory, just trying to get to the bottom of it. You can actually start picking bits and pieces and find where it all correlates together and find the middle ground and what actually works. But I think we're definitely heading into a solar minimum at the moment. We're heading, there is no global warming or climate change or whatever they want to call it. If anything, we're heading into an ice age at the moment. Things are really, really cooling down. And that's what happens during a solar minimum, when there's less and less sunspot activity. So, and that's what's happening at the moment. So, yeah.
Max, do you
I'm
think
not
you
really
could
sure how
touch
to
on
respond on that.
these another part of maybe one of the first pastimes is these potential giant trees and silicone stumps? And Martin, maybe if you had some images to put up.
Yeah, Martin,
on
go back
that.
to that picture and show how the intricacy of that. You just passed.
Well, the whole concept of Silicon Life, it shouldn't be so far fetched for people. We've got Silicon Life now. We've got three types of life we're told on Earth, which is bacteria, eukarya, And what's the other one? I can't think of the third one. But the third one is silicon life, which lives in the ice shelf and lives in volcanoes, and it lives in very, very harsh environments, which is silicon-based life. You know, people think, oh, no, that's not possible. Well, it could well be possible. When you look at that whole No Trees on the Earth video that came out, and it talked about the petrified forest that's in the United States. They've got all those tree stumps and logs that are all sawn, and they're all crystal inside. Well, what turns trees into crystal? How is that a petrification process? What is it that turns wood into precious stones?
Look at that.
I mean, it's not possible. You're sure you can turn wood into stone,
Right.
but not into gemstones. How does that work? Yeah? Perhaps the trees were already gemstones. Perhaps this was silicon life, which was why they were cut down, because they wanted those gems. Yeah, what causes that? How can you possibly have that? How can you have wood turn into precious gems? It doesn't make sense. And even when you look at fossilization, I mean, it's been proven now that you can create a fossil in about 35 years.
Yeah, it's not
All you
like
have to do
we
is
see
immerse something in like a saline mud. You know, salty mud will turn flesh into stone. And there was a guy who found a foot in a shoe that was fossilized, and the shoe manufacturer recognized the shoe. So nothing we're told is true. Nothing we're told is true.
What do you think is here right there? See that? That's just all old ancient big trees, man.
Yeah,
Chop down
great
trees,
pictures.
man. Right, by big giant entities, man. Big chopped down trees, man.
Yeah, that's what I think a lot of them were. So what would cause that? Do we shrink every time there's a reset? Is it like that? The smaller our consciousness becomes through the further dumbing down, the further loss of our language, the further loss of our ability to even be able to understand what reality is.
Yep.
Does that happen? Does that affect our stature? Do we become smaller as we lose this knowledge? Because that's what seems to be happening.
Martin, what are we looking at right now?
An opalized tree trunk. This stuff's, you know, they're saying that like this sort of process takes, you know, like you just said, you can make a fossil in a very short space of time, but you know, this
But
is.
how do you turn a tree? I mean, you can turn a tree into a fossil, but how do you turn it into gemstones? What process causes that? Or was that literally how it was? Was that a silicon tree that grew gemstones that are literally growing?
I'm all for the silicon-based life forms, and why wouldn't you have? They tell us enough in contemporary like programs that we do have silicon-based life forms, and I think that they would. So yeah, it could be that. Just like in that movie, or is it Avatar? Yeah, you know these. But like this example, why wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what I think. That's what I think we had. I think, and I wouldn't even be surprised if some of the giants were silicon based. Who knows? I mean, who knows?
I'm just thinking, no, it's got a crystalline structure, you know, this place being water and all. This must have had a lot of information. Let's be honest, it does look like the brain, doesn't it, or the lung, you know, the tree branches. It's a very close connection with electromagnetics as well, isn't there? There's an ancient forest there. It's supposed to be when the tide goes out, and this is in Scotland, and it's just like they say, it's petrified forest from ancient times, you know, whatever, prehistoric, but recent. This is recent from a recent cataclysm. They just got to keep, you know, to saying it's a long time ago, all of this, don't worry, but I'm sorry, geology is just falling short. There's no doubt about it in my mind. It's just.
Yeah, well, that's why they created the Dark Ages, just to push everything 1,000 years in the past, so we'd stop questioning all this stuff that's around us, you know.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming up on the 3-hour mark. I know we could probably sit here and do this all night, but I was wondering if anybody might have some closing statements. We'll wrap it up in about 10 minutes.
No, it's been good to come and chat, though. Really enjoyed it. Nice to connect with everybody. Interesting conversation. I want to show you this painting this guy did of me.
Nice.
This guy took a photograph. I went to a rally in Brisbane, and this guy said, "I'd like to do a painting of you, Max." And he took a photograph, and then he gave me this painting. Check this out.
You killed him, Max. Wow.
That is awesome.
It honestly looks like a photograph.
Wow.
I cannot believe how good this artist is. And it's just this random guy.
Can I do an illustration for you and send it to you?
Sure, but like I cannot believe this. It looks like a photograph.
Really
It
well done.
literally looks like a photograph. I don't know how he did it, but incredible stuff. I just thought I'd share that with you. But no, it's been great, guys. It's been really good to come on and have a chat.
So, yeah,
3
so
hours, right? I
Max,
didn't feel
yeah,
like that.
so Max, I don't know, can you see the chat room? I'm gonna post a link to the Tartarian airships that me and Martin did. I just put it up right there. That's the link to Tartarian airships, and that's the link to
Okay.
my backup channel, right? So
I've shared it like 20 times with friends.
Absolutely, thank you, my brother. Yeah, Martin did his thing on there too.
That's great. I'll put it in the description of this video, and anyone feel free to share this video anywhere you would like.
I think this is a good, hey, Patrick, I
thanks.
think this is a really good conversation. That was really good. Thank you for inviting us. I think this is a really good grown-up discussion. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you know, we all have to agree on everything, but you know, it's a really grown-up. It's a serious times, and I think real people do real things. So this is a good move. I'm really feeling. And watching, you did a hell of a job. Good job, brother.
Thank you, brother. Hey, Martin, give us some closing notes.
Just like Max says, man, you got to keep that vibration high. Do not give them an inch. Yeah, as soon as you cause any doubts that it's not going to work out okay, then that's them and they're winning. So don't give them that. You got to be like James Cagney, yeah, at the top of the world.
Yeah, face infinity without flinching, guys. That's what
I
you
love
do.
that.
Fight like a warrior.
Hey, Clive, we can't close the show without you saying hello and goodbye.
And make sure Clyde and Max change information. So
Have I got you on Skype, Clive?
You should have.
Yeah. All right. Cool. All right. I'll check.
Some years ago, when I was getting really depressed with the state of the world, somebody suggested the mantra of don't let anybody or anything upset your nice day.
Right.
And it works.
Well said.
And I'd like to say a quick closing. I'd like to thank everybody in this community for inspiring me. I've been involved in this research community since the 90s with, starting with Art Bell in the Coast to Coast era, all the way up into this new era. But on a closing note, I really wanted to thank the New Chronology movement, Anatoly Fomenko for inspiring a lot of this research, the New Earth channel for taking the torch from there, Philip Druce-Hinnon, and obviously Martin and Max and Richard for some of the contributions. And for people that are listening, John Levi, Conspiracies Are Us, Mudflood Channel, UAP Channel, Robert Seffer, Wise Up, Mind Unveiled, Autodidactic, Observation Deck, Rebel Without a Pause, Rosette Delacroix, Barnabas Nagy, Static in the Attic, Subphotonic, Justin Pauling, Stellium 7, and in the documentary, There Are No Forests on the Flat Earth. If I left anybody out, I'm sorry, but everyone that was not here, you're still, we're thinking about, I'm just thanking everybody for all the contributions and all this phenomenal research. And while we continue to, be inspired by Tartaria, do a lot of the dark work dealing with some of the stuff, we can always lift the spirit and have a nice balance between the light and the dark as we try to make our way through this transcendental matrix. But I love everybody. Thanks, everybody. And thank you, Patrick, for inviting me.
Thank you all. I just want to let you all know that I will be organizing an event this August in upstate New York. If you want more information on that, please join my Discord. The link is hackerheart.org, or just reach out to anyone in this group call for more information.
Well, thank you, brother. I love you.
Much respect to all of you. Have a great night, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Be in touch.
Peace.
Peace.
Love everyone.
Yep.
Have a great night.
Peace.
Peace and love.